Okay, everyone, welcome to Reality Check. It is the Monday. It's the top of the New Year week edition of Reality Check here on the home of Black Talk Media. It's none other than WURD. Welcome to the program and happy Kwanzaa to you. Happy Kwanzaa to you. I believe today is Ujima. Ujima, collective working responsibility, is the Kwanzaa principle for the day. So particularly for those of you observing the Nguzo Saba. So happy Kwanzaa to you and welcome to the program. I'm Charles Ellison. I'm your host, executive producer, and creator of Reality Check here on 96.1 FM, 900 AM, WURDradio.com, WURD TV, and WURD app. It's good to be here. Good to see you all after the holiday. I hope everyone had at least that first portion of the holiday season. You had a safe one and a rested one, a relaxing weekend. Always good to have a major holiday on the weekend on a day like Friday, so you can get like that 3 to 4 day weekend. Hope everyone enjoyed that. Hope everyone was keeping safe out there, socially distancing, masking, not having overcrowded holiday parties at your house, because you know you're not supposed to do that, and trying to limit or lessen the spread of this coronavirus as best as possible. Yes, it's been a weird 2020, but we're going to get through the rest of it, and we're going to head into 2021 refreshed, re-energized, and ready to take it all on. So, and Reality Check here to help you with that. So just kind of revving up here in this New Year's week as we start to count down to 2021. The phone lines are open at the moment, 215-634-8065. That's 215-634-8065, toll free. It is 866-361-0900. You can also leave comments in the Facebook Live section at facebook.com/4word. If you're watching us on WURD TV, feel free to leave comments and questions there, which many of you get into the habit of doing. We appreciate that. Or you can go to youtube.com/onWURD, youtube.com/onWURD. Not as many people leaving comments there, but we'll start to use that a little bit more too as we head into the new year. youtube.com/onWURD, facebook.com/4word for those of you who watch us through WURD TV. You are listening to us live through our robust live stream at WURDradio.com. For those of you enamored with Black Talk Media out of Philly, PA, and also the nation's capital, Washington, D.C. as well. Reality Check, we come at you live from Philly to D.C. So continue to also catch myself on social media at Ellison Report on Twitter.com, at Ellison Report on Twitter.com. You can also leave comments and questions there too. 215-634-8065. Toll free. It is 866-361-0900 here on Reality Check. 215-634-8065. Toll free. It is 866-361-0900. For those of you in Philly, in Philadelphia, we are about 11 homicides away from a record 500 murders for the year. By the time we reach the end of 2020, we are about 11 homicides away from the very grisly, dreadful, horrific number of 500. We have to date 489 homicides or murders in the city of Philadelphia so far in 2020. The homicide rate has not lessened at all. It has stayed very steadily at 39% more than where it was the same time last year. No signs or indications that anyone in City Hall is doing anything about it or knows what to do about it, much less folks who are in the communities that are getting hit and impacted the most. Fear is spreading throughout Philadelphia, and also frustration, and can definitely understand that. Shooting incidents are 67% above where they were this same time, or above where they were, this same time last year. 67% more shooting incidents in 2020 than in 2019. 54% more shooting victims. That's right, you heard that correct. 54% more shooting victims in 2020 thus far than were in 2019. There were 1,415 shooting victims in 2019. There are now so far 2,173 shooting victims. That is in addition to, that's aside from the 489 people that have been murdered, their lives now cut short. So far in 2020, we have 2,173 people who are going to have to, for the rest of their lives, are going to have to live with the pain, the trauma of being shot, and also knowing that their city government and the state as well, because the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania bears just as much responsibility, but realizing that they're not doing a thing about it, and in some respects, due to many of the policy decisions they're making, they're actually aggravating the situation, actually adding to it. So that's where we are right now as far as violence in the city of Philadelphia, and we'll continue to talk about that on a regular daily basis until someone does something, someone does a plan. I mean, there's some immediate first steps. I'm quite surprised and stunned that no one has taken, and instead City Hall just is sort of, who knows what they're doing, but there is a lot of using the pandemic as an excuse for not doing what they could easily be doing. There's certain things that people could, certain actions that people could be taking right away, sort of readily, to basically mitigate the violence, to reduce or to eliminate the violence that's happening throughout Philadelphia. But, you know, some people have said some of this is by design too. When there's blood on the streets, remember, when there's blood on the streets and certain people get pushed out, and it just sets the stage. Maybe this is what certain folks want. Sets the stage for certain types of folks to move in. So who knows? But we'll talk more about that. 215-634-8065, toll free, 866-361-0900 here on Reality Check. 215-634-8065, toll free, 866-361-0900. Philly not the only one dealing with that violence. There are other cities elsewhere. Violence rates, homicide rates are spiking everywhere. So that's something we're going to continue to keep a close eye on as we head into 2021, and we also head into a new administration, January 20th being the date that President Biden takes his seat in the White House and starts with the Biden administration. We don't know what the political calculus in Washington, D.C. will look like until January 5th, when we presume we'll know the outcome of the two Senate seat races, the Senate runoff that's happening in Georgia. In fact, the two candidates down there, John Ossoff and also Reverend Ralph Warnock, are saying or claiming that they are losing money fast. They are burning cash fast in their campaigns and putting out some very frantic last-minute pre-New Year's calls for more donations, more contributions, so they can keep up with what we're noticing is a steady increase. Right now, at the moment, Democrats have outraised Republicans in those two Georgia Senate seat races, but Democrats are also burning a lot of cash in these efforts to try to win these seats. And it's down to the wire before this January 5th runoff. But both candidates who are working as a team right now, and that's the way they should do it, they are saying that they are running out of a lot of cash. They're burning a lot of cash, and they need more cash to come in. This has amounted to, so far, the most expensive U.S. Senate race in American history. But it's not money alone that will do it, because remember, Donald Trump won in 2016 being the underfunded candidate. Also, we've had multiple Senate races this year in 2020 where well-funded Democratic candidates were well-financed and they lost. Jamie Harrison comes to mind down in South Carolina. He may end up becoming the next chair of the Democratic Party, the Democratic National Committee. So it's not, money isn't always the sure shot when it comes to these elections. Sometimes you need more than that. You need a very active and very creative ground game to get you through it. So let's just see how this goes. But right now, the polls show there's some polls that are coming out of Georgia. They've been doing very little polling in Georgia, but the few polls that have come out have found both those seats or candidates or both sets of candidates in those seats neck and neck. Actually, Ralph Warnock about a percentage point ahead of Kelly Loeffler, but I wouldn't count on that when it's neck and neck. We just have to kind of wait and see what's going to happen on January 5th on the actual runoff day itself. So you all heard the big news of the top of the week of the Monday, and we'll talk more about it when we get into our roundtable session, which is coming up very shortly here on Reality Check, is that emergency relief, the stimulus bill as it's called, was finally signed by President Trump overnight. So that's $900 billion in emergency relief funding and pandemic stimulus for the short term. This is temporary, $900 billion, just short of a trillion, just south of a trillion. And that also keeps unemployment benefits or current temporary unemployment benefits extended. That'll be extended for another 11 weeks. And that also staves off disaster as far as things of the sort like evictions are concerned. So eviction moratoriums will be extended. Two, we're also going to see the enhancement or the expansion of food assistance, of food security programs, otherwise AKA known as food stamps. Those will also be expanded and extended as well. So that was signed in addition to a $1.4 trillion government spending bill, keeps the government financed between now to September 2021 until we get into the next fight. And so we'll see what kind of president Joe Biden is, if he can keep the government from shutting down. Depends on, once again, how things turn out. Depends on how things turn out on January 5th. Will Democrats get to retain by, and this will just be by a seat, be by like the skin of their teeth, as they say. Will they get to take the majority, which is where, if those two seats are won by John Ossoff and Ralph Warnock, then the tiebreaker will always be Vice President Kamala Harris. So let's see how that turns out. Or will Mitch McConnell run the federal government? Because that's what's at stake in Georgia. It's not about those two Georgia Senate seats. It's whether or not people want, and this is full stop, whether or not they want Joe Biden, who is the democratically elected new president of the United States. Do you want Joe Biden running the government, or do you want Mitch McConnell running the government? Because that's what's at stake here in Georgia. So let's see how that turns out. But that was finally signed by President Trump. There was a back and forth. It was swinging. The pendulum was swinging all weekend. People were biting their nails, just trying to figure out, was Donald Trump going to sign this relief bill? Was he also going to keep the government open and operating, keeping that funding in there, because they couldn't do a continuing resolution on that? Or was he going to just pocket veto, just kind of snub Congress all the way into January 20th? So he finally did sign on to it after increased pressure from obviously the public and more intensely from his Republican colleagues as well. There was some final sit down that was happening between him, his Treasury Secretary Steve Mnuchin, and also Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell, all saying, hey, listen, you need to sign this. So that has been signed, but not after a lot of wrangling over the value of stimulus, And so now the other thing, too, is Americans will get $600 in direct payments. That might amount to about $150. The last round when we did this, when we got the $1,200 checks, that was 153 million Americans in total. That doesn't mean that's 153 million Americans without a job. It's just, this is all about kind of injecting the economy with more the Federal Reserve, printing more money and injecting the economy with more cash so people can spend, because nearly 3/4 of the entire economy it runs on consumer spending. So a lot of people who weren't out of a job still got that $1,200 stimulus check. A lot of people who still have a job will get that $600 stimulus check as well. But there's this whole notion that, and there were some folks who were arguing against President Trump's proposal for $2,000, which I was good with it. I agree with it. I was just like House Speaker Nancy Pelosi. Why not $2,000? But there's this whole notion that struggling folks don't deserve that much money. Back in 2008, when the banks who had created the Great Recession, that financial crisis back then, when they needed the money, they were quick, right? They were quick. They came up with, when it was all said and done, they injected nearly $2 trillion into the banks that had caused that crisis, that were directly responsible for that meltdown, for that crisis. And that money got to them fast, too. It wasn't a situation like in Pennsylvania where they got funds and, nearly 3/4 of the funds weren't spent. it wasn't a situation like that. No, they knew how to cut the checks and they knew how to funnel the money directly to the banks real quick. But whenever we talk about, the economy is always strong, fundamentals are always strong. But whenever we talk about struggling Americans and, going through a crisis or an economic disaster, a tailspin, and they needing that direct infusion of cash, suddenly the economy is not so strong. Suddenly we've got all kinds of problems. Oh, we can't do that. That's too much. The economy. We had a former Treasury Secretary, Larry Summers, Treasury Secretary under Clinton, say, he was saying over the weekend, oh, yeah, I'm worried the economy will overheat if we do $2,000 checks. I'm not even a fan. This is what he said. I'm not even a fan of $600 checks because the economy will overheat. Like, really? 21 trillion, we're talking about a damn near $22 trillion economy. The largest economy in the world. The American economy is so large, it accounts for a quarter, about 25% of overall global economic growth. And that's going to overheat because people get $2,000 checks. So we need to get into a conversation about what exactly that means. And no one really fact checked that or got into a situation or create a situation in the American discourse where we could refute those types of claims from someone like a Larry Summers or from other economists as well, who forget that the core asset of this economy is the people. It's the people. It's us. It's the folks who spend on it, who keep it alive, who keep it afloat. Because when they're saying, oh, we don't want to put cash in their pockets, then suddenly it's as if we're not the core asset. Suddenly they forget that 3/4 of the American economy runs on the decisions that we make about what we want to spend on. Because if we stop spending, then the economy falters. The economy fails if we don't spend, which is actually very powerful. That's a very powerful leveraging tool, if you think about it. Keep that in mind. So now we're down to a pittance of $600 checks. That'll, I guess, until we get to the next, we'll see what President Biden comes up with, whether we'll go back to $1,200 checks or whether we'll get those $2,000 checks. I mean, in other countries, in other European countries, places like Germany, the Netherlands, even England to an extent, they've been either doing direct monthly pay, or Canada, they've been either doing direct monthly payments or helping people keep their current jobs and then taking care of the bulk of their salaries. So their pandemic social safety net programs are very generous and keeping people afloat. And they're just basically, they're committed to, okay, let's just get through this, get everybody immunized, and then we'll get back to economic business as usual. But in the meantime, this is what governments are supposed to do, particularly strong economy. Governments with strong economies are supposed to stash money away, for a big rainy day like this, for an extended rainy day. And that has not happened. That's the reason why it's been so hard to get through this pandemic. Because policymakers forgetting at the end of the day, we are the central asset. We are the core asset. We, the people, as they say, are the core asset of this economy. So much of the economy runs on that. So we'll talk a little bit more about that. Go to the latest, we have a companion magazine, The Reality Check, on WURD. Go to the latest, just dropped, go to the latest B-Note at thebnote.com, thebenote.com. Go to the latest there, and you'll see some analysis on this, the myth of too much relief. The myth of too much relief. Would adequate or generous relief during an economic disaster really overheat the economy? Does it really overheat it? And I reject that notion that would overheat. I don't think it would overheat. Of course, you don't want to do this for the long term. That is unsustainable because right now the government is spending more money. The government spent about $7 trillion thus far in 2020 in response to pandemic relief, far more than they spent during the Great Recession back in 2008. So, and it's been generating less revenue. The government has to generate revenue. The government, operates like any standard company, and you can't keep spending if you're not making enough money. So far, the government has spent $7 trillion in assorted resources in response to the pandemic, for better or for worse, how that money's been spent. But it's only generated a little. It's only generated a little under $4 trillion this year in terms of tax revenues and other types of and fees and everything else. So So it's bringing in far less than it's spending right now. You can't do that for the long term. We know that. We understand that. But in the short term, yes, you can spend. You can make $2,000 stimulus payments. You can do that. It can be done for the short term, just until we get on the other side and everyone gets vaccinated. No one said we're going to be doing this for the next 10 or 20 years. You just need to be doing it for about a year or so to get us all through this with as little pain and as smoothly as possible. Okay, let's take a break, and when we come back on the other side, because remember the phone lines were open. I don't know if y'all knew that phone lines were open. So anyway, now we're going to go to our roundtable. We'll go to our roundtable. We have Mo Kelly from KFAI AM in Los Angeles of the Mo Kelly Show. He's going to be joining us. Also, Janice Hazel, political strategist from Detroit, also with the Michigan Chronicle. Detroit and LA going to be joining us next here on our roundtable session on Reality Check 96.1 FM 900 AM, WURDradio.com, WURD TV, WURD app. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Enterprise Exterminators, located 4943 Wayne Avenue, specializing in lantern flies, termites, bed bugs, fleas, mice, and roaches. Do-it-yourself kits are available. Call now, 215-849-7070.
Need a new mattress? Stop by to see Julian, the Mattress Man, located at 7421 Stenton Avenue. You deal directly with the owner, Julian, to ensure the best prices on name brand mattresses like Sealy, Posturepedic. Call 215-424-5550. That's 215-424-5550.
This message is from the Philadelphia Department of Public Health. COVID-19 is still a threat in our communities, but we can all do something simple to help stop the spread. It's critically important to wear a mask or face covering whenever you're in public or around others. Yes, even while social distancing. Wearing a mask shows you care for yourself and your community and is essential to slowing the spread of COVID-19. So love yourself, love your neighbors, wear a mask.
Reality Check
with Charles Ellison
right now on WURD Radio
and WURDradio.com.
All right, welcome back to Reality Check. We're just making sure we get our round tablists together, getting them at the table. So it just takes a little bit of technical skill doing so. We have our round table. As you can see, if you're watching us on WURD TV, you can see Mr. Mo Kelly, host, executive producer of the Mo Kelly Show on KFAI and radio in Los Angeles, joining us from the West Coast a little bit earlier out that way. So we always appreciate Mo joining us a little bit earlier in the morning. Thanks so much. Good seeing you, Mo. Excellent. I think we have Janice Hazel. Not sure if she sees or hears us. She's also joining us by Skype. We're going to bring her in shortly. We're going to start with Mo, but we'll bring her in shortly. Political strategist based up in Detroit, Michigan, former senior aide to the late Congressman John Conyers, also senior contributor for the Michigan Chronicle, black newspaper of record there in Detroit. Can you hear us, Janice, by the way? Okay, we'll see if we can try to get Janice on. If we can't get her by Skype, then maybe we might have to hang up with her and then bring her back on by phone. So we'll see. I'm sure Troy's working that out right now. We'll just go ahead and get started with Mo Kelly starting our roundtable session here. So, Mo, did you try at all this weekend to try to decipher exactly what was going on through the mind of President Trump as he was going back and forth on whether or not to sign the stimulus bill and also funding for the federal government on through September? Not sure. Well, there's all sorts of theories as to what was happening there. But what do you think his calculus is ahead of January 20th? I mean, this is all settled. It's all said and done. I mean, we may have something unusual happen in Congress on January 6th as they certify the Electoral College certification. But other than that, what exactly is he trying to do here?
I think the only through line or point of consistency with this president is that he would like to be at the center of attention for all things, and he would like to make his enemies suffer. In this case, you had a merge of being the center of attention as far as he didn't have any real power other than to get in the way of the signing of the stimulus. So it served his interest in that regard to get in the way. And also he could thumb his nose at those Republican senators specifically like Mitch McConnell, who he may have perceived as an enemy or did not support him enough. Right. So this was the opportunity for the president to be the president one more time, not really affecting any change, but possibly getting in the way of change, and then at the end saying, okay, I relent, I'll sign it. He didn't really change anything, but he did slow down the process. And I think if you're sitting in his seat, his calculation is simply, let me just be the center of the story. And he was that.
Yeah, he definitely was the center of the story. Do we have, I wonder if we have Janice yet. Janice, can you hear us? Okay, we don't have Janice yet. She's there on Skype, but I don't know if she is, if she realizes she can also, I don't know if she's on mute or if she can't see us by video, but we'll just continue to talk with Mo Kelly until we get Janice on. Janice, if you're able to finally step in, just go ahead and jump in. It's all about him being the center of attention. It's all about, he's uncomfortable with the whole notion of being a lame duck president. I've said that, lame duck, that doesn't suit him well. He doesn't wear that well. He doesn't like that term very well. How does it set him up? I mean, what do you think the future is like for him and the Republican Party, particularly after an episode like this, Mo?
At this point, we know that he still has a stranglehold on the Republican Party, but you see that there are cracks in the dam, the proverbial cracks, if you will. I don't necessarily know if he'll be able to wield this type of influence. In fact, I suspect he won't. He won't be able to wield this type of influence after he leaves office, because you talk about having the carrot and the stick. He will not have the stick anymore, and he really can't do anything in terms of Congress as a carrot. So then he's just a literal carnival barker on the periphery. So when he leaves office, I expect him to be loud, I expect him to be boisterous, but I don't expect him to have the hold on the party. What that means is he will be able to have rallies, he will be able to exert influence, but not to the degree that he had before. And I don't necessarily know whether he's going to be running in 2024, if only because there's a lot of life between now and then as far as state investigations. And let's not forget, he's not a young man himself. Neither is presidential-elect Joe Biden, but especially not Donald Trump. And so we will probably hear more about his health when he leaves office.
Yeah, I think this is going to wear him out. Janice, I think we have you by phone now. Can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you. I could see and hear both of you, but for some reason my video camera just had a flash
wasn't
through
working.
it, so I couldn't
Right.
get connected.
Yeah, this stuff never works 100% of the time, especially when you want it to work the most. No worries at all. We finally got you by phone. Janice, when did you step in and see, I don't know if you've heard some of this conversation, but, how you were deciphering the political calculus by this president, holding up the stimulus, the relief package, and also government funding to the very last hour, right, to the 11th hour. And we went past the expiration date on unemployment benefits. So what was your take on that?
Well, it's about a deranged lunatic. I think Omarosa was accurate with the title of her book, Unhinged, because there's no reason for this to have happened. He got nothing out of it politically. He has no leverage. In my experience working in the United States Senate and in the United States House of Representatives as both a legislative staffer as well as a lobbyist on the outside, this has never happened before. It's cruel. It's inhumane. Those individuals who have now lost a week of unemployment because it expired, the pandemic unemployment expired on the 26th. Those people typically would be certifying on Monday, so they've lost it. Now, most likely the states will go retroactive and send it back to them. However, we know that there was a very difficult time in the spring getting people on because all of the unemployment systems throughout the country are antiquated and ill-equipped for this type of pandemic assistance for people who've never been able to get unemployment, these self-employed, small businesses, 1099, gig workers, things of that nature. So there was nothing for him to gain out of it. I honestly believe that he has a mental deficiency, and there's nothing that can tell me, I started out working on the Hill under Reagan. I moved through both Bushes and was in the Obama administration. This is absolutely ludicrous. So he's unhinged. Whoever spoke to him to get him to come to some semblance of a right mind is what happened, but it's really inhumane and cruel, and that's I think the brand of this administration. It's just liars and cheats and inhumane insensitivity.
Yeah. It's interesting. You just said something too here, Janice. I want you to expound on, both you and Mo to jump in on this, because there was another part of the conversation that had been happening since the bill was passed last week, suggesting, we heard this from former Treasury Secretary Larry Summers, that he wasn't a fan of these direct payments. He's like, I'm not a fan of $600 payments, but definitely not a fan of $2,000 payments because it will overheat the economy. Something Janice was just saying that strikes me, I think, because she's very correct. Factually, she's correct. But I think it also warrants a larger, a broader conversation about, where she was saying how systems are antiquated, state systems, the federal government system for getting direct payments or unemployment benefits to people. It's antiquated. It's never antiquated when we need to give money to the banks and the financial sector, right? The systems, they flow smooth. It's like the payments are like that overnight. And I feel like there's a need for something of a pushback against this notion that the economy gets strained once we start talking about making those direct injections of relief directly to people, because we never talk about the economy getting strained, or we don't have as intense a discussion about the economy getting strained when we have to bail out banking institutions that create economic crisis. We didn't have it wasn't like that. People knew what they had to do back in 2008, and I was fine with that. But I find that interesting. Real quick, Mo, jump in on that.
Well, I think of it this way. This is America being America in many senses. We do not care about the individual American. It's one thing to say that that we do, but it's another thing to act like what we do. The whole idea of not giving Americans $2,000 is ridiculous to me. And if you want to talk about economic strain, think of people not having money versus people having money to at least pay some of their bills, not all their bills. They should have passed this COVID relief some 5-6 months ago. But in the inability to do that, then they have 5-6 more months of real economic stress. We want to talk about stress on the economy. Let's talk about that. And so we got to this point where in this lame duck session, it's not just a lame duck president, we have a lame duck Congress. And when you have some members of Congress who will not be returning in January, who are not under any type of impetus or any type of real pressure to get something done for the American people. And we have all sorts of pork in this bill, COVID relief bill, which is not necessary. And so the American people get a pittance in response at the last second. And then you have this deranged president who's then going to weigh in with his personal and political grievances. And so once again, the American people are at the end of the line. Yeah. And you know, yes, our systems are antiquated, but when you have a tyrant as president and a lame duck Congress, then you have a confluence of events which really makes it bad for people.
Yeah, yeah. Janice, and how do we end up with all that pork? You worked up on the Hill. You know, you work primarily on the House side, but you know what it's like when you get into these sorts of negotiations and making these compromises. Because there's a lot of, like, unnecessary spending in this pandemic relief, things that have nothing to do with pandemic relief, from what is like $500 million for a Israeli missile defense system to racehorse tax. If you have a racehorse, you know, you get like a tax credit for that. Just all sorts of unusual things that had absolutely nothing to do with pandemic.
Well, it's necessary to distinguish between the pandemic relief bill and the omnibus spending bill. The omnibus spending bill is what is funding the federal government. That is something that passes every year. So for the 3 years prior, this president signed off on it with all of the earmarks going to foreign countries. He signed off on it, and every president prior to him have signed off on it. So it is deranged for him to, in the 11th hour, having not participated or engaged at all in the negotiations, to come back. And it really speaks to him not knowing the process, not knowing the legislative process, and not understanding or knowing anything about the Constitution, because the omnibus spending bill was merged with, it was tacked on to the COVID relief bill. But rest assured, if that COVID relief bill had never even been hatched, never even thought of, the omnibus spending bill would also have been put forth. I mean, that's something that goes forth every year. Last year, we saw him allow the federal government to shut down because he did not sign off on the omnibus spending bill in 2018. December 22nd, 2018 until January 25th. I know very well because I was a federal employee, and I had 1,300 people waiting for their FBI background checks to complete, and that pushed everything back by about 4 months. So it's not that the Israeli spending bill or the transgender study, all of these different things that were in it, that was in the omnibus spending bill. And Congress should have never put them together. They should have dealt with the House version of the COVID relief bill in May, in June, over the summer. And they should have, the Congress, those members of Congress need to be fired. I don't know why the American people will not wake up, but they did not do their job. And any place I've ever worked, government and industry, when I did not put forth my budget prior to the end of the fiscal year, that's cause for termination. So for them to be on the brink once again is absolutely obscene. And then you have this man baby in the White House having tantrums at the last minute. He's talking about redlining and rescissions. Once again, he doesn't know the process. The bills have already been passed. There will be no redlining. There will be no rescission. He has signed it, so it's moving forward. And it's just simply he's abdicated his responsibility to do his job. He's lobbying to keep a job he doesn't want to do and is not doing. It is the mark of an insane person.
Yeah, and I suspect that's probably why he finally signed it. Maybe as you said, you know, he's just this shows his lack of knowledge on the process or what was going on here. And I guess it took like a huddle with Steve Mnuchin and also Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell to tell him, hey, listen, you know the government funding bill is tied into, it's wrapped into the pandemic relief bill. Like, did you realize that? He probably didn't realize it. No one, either like he wasn't listening, or no one just kind of in a very elementary way laid that out for him. He's like, oh yeah, okay, let's. I'll go ahead and sign it. Let me take a break here. That was Janice Hazel just now. She's joining us by phone from Detroit, Michigan. Our regular roundtablist, and Mr. Mo Kelly back with us as our regular roundtablist of the Mo Kelly Show. Don't forget, today is Ujima. Ujima is the third principle of Kwanzaa. Ujima focuses on collective responsibility and encourages us to uplift others as a solution to conflicts. WURD continues to uplift our communities and provide a voice, ensuring that all are heard. Right now, you can join the WURD radio family at a discounted rate of $80 until January 1st, New Year's Day 2021. Become a onWURD member today, and it gives you access to special events, exclusive digital content, WURD swag, VIP invitations, discounts, and our printed newsletter, WURD Press. So visit wordradio.com/join now for more details. Happy Kwanzaa to everyone again. And don't forget, today's principle is Ujima, the third principle of Kwanzaa. Let's take a break, and we'll be right back on our roundtable here with Janice Hazel and Mo Kelly here on Reality Check 96.1 FM 900 AM, wordradio.com, WURD TV, WURD app. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Every day, 47.9 million family caregivers perform labors of love by helping their parents and spouses. Family caregivers help their older loved ones with medications, medical care, meals, bathing, dressing, and much more. While they wouldn't have it any other way, they need some support. AARP has information and online communities to help support caregivers. Learn more at aarp.org/caregiving.
Jobs,
Entrepreneurship opportunities, small business resources,
and financial literacy.
livelihood. The new initiative from WURD Radio to connect Philadelphians to resources to help take the next steps in their professional lives. WordWorks.com features career readiness tools, entrepreneurship resources, funding opportunities, and events to expand your livelihood. Visit WURDworks.com right now and take the next step in your professional journey. Livelihood is supported by the Nightland Fest's Local News Transformation Fund, Borealis Philanthropies Racial Equity and Journalism Fund, and the Solutions Journalism Network.
Did you know you can catch the flu and COVID-19 at the same time, or even back-to-back? Don't risk catching the flu during the COVID-19 pandemic. The flu shot is a safe and effective way of reducing your chances of catching the flu or spreading it to others. And the flu shot helps protect you and your community from the worst effects of the flu. Don't say, I should have got my flu shot. Call your doctor or visit your pharmacist and get your flu shot today.
Reality Check
With Charles Ellison right now on WURD Radio
and wordradio.com.
All right, welcome back to Reality Check 96.1 FM 900 AM, wordradio.com, WURD TV, WURD app. We still have Mo Kelly on with us of the Mo Kelly Show out in Los Angeles, and Janice Hazel is regular contributor to the Michigan Chronicle, political strategist based in Detroit, Michigan, and former senior legislative aide to the late Congressman John Conyers. Okay, we have her joining us by Skype. She's on WURD TV now. So good to see you there. Janice, can you hear us?
I can hear you.
Okay, excellent. All right, good to have you back. Appreciate that. The other thing I want to talk about, one of the things that happened over the weekend, over the holiday weekend, was this bombing, the suicide bombing. That's basically what it was. It was a terroristic suicide bombing. It's interesting how when, we know what it is when it happens in the Middle East, but, people just have trouble trying to define that it's terrorism when it happens when armed white men do it. But this was basically a suicide bombing in downtown Nashville. Thankfully, no one else got hurt or killed or murdered. But what is that what do you think, Mo? Janice, I'll go with you on this first. What do you think this was a precursor to? How much do we worry about political violence or terrorism ratcheting up as we head into the new Biden administration?
Well, I think that because the local officials are hesitant to label this the T word, terrorism, but it is domestic terrorism when you have someone do that, a bomb. You don't know, no one knows what was going on in this gentleman's mind, 63 years old. No manifesto has been found as of yet. We simply don't know. But I do know, having lived through the Washington, D.C. Beltway sniper and others in the Washington, D.C. area. Exactly.
Yeah, that was frightening. Yeah.
Right, and the Navy Yard, exactly. It's, you know, we have these terrorist cells, which are Americans. Whether or not they've been co-opted by other nations, don't know. This could be, and this is just me being a hardcore Democrat, this is some individual who was a Trump Tea Party holdover who just decided he was going to go out that way. There's no other explanation for it at this time. I think in the upcoming weeks we'll get more as the FBI and national intelligence are able to gather something. But he left, and right now they're saying that there was no manifesto and there was no letter. So we don't know why he did this.
Right, right. And, you know, what do we know so far? I mean, what are you thinking, Mo? And I mean, we just have this recording, this announcement that he was making over a loudspeaker before the explosion happened. And I haven't heard that. I mean, I haven't heard or I haven't read exactly what was, you know, it's kind of unclear to me. I haven't looked too deeply into it exactly what was said. It was just basically he was warning, but I'm not too sure if that was a manifesto in and of itself. But what do you think that this is a precursor to? How much do you worry about what might happen? I mean, I'm a little bit concerned about, well, I'm sure there'll be high security there. I hope there will be on Inauguration Day, and people will err on the side of caution. One, it's unhealthy because it's a pandemic still going on, so I wouldn't want a whole lot of people down at the National Mall anyway. But two, I worry about the security situation on Inauguration Day on January 20th. Mo?
I wouldn't say this is a precursor to anything. I would say it's a continuation of the mood in this country. It's not like the MAGA bomber did not already exist. It's not like we didn't have these plots to kidnap Governor Gretchen Whitmer or to even assassinate Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. So let's put it in its proper context within this timeline. And also the past is prologue. What have we seen about quote-unquote domestic terrorists? They've been largely ignored. We had a law because of one illegal immigrant, one undocumented person was involved in the killing of Kate Steinle. We got Kate's Law because of one. So the whole idea of creating legislation or creating more concern when there is a white person involved, or I should say a non-black, non-brown person, it's that they are not as much of a threat. They are not deemed a threat, much less deemed a terrorist. So if anything, the past is prologue. It does not matter what this guy did. It does not matter that no other people were killed. It does not matter that it was an intentional act. Our response as a country in terms of policy will not be any different because there is an obvious reluctance or an unwillingness to designate these individuals as actual terrorists. You put a brown man in that truck, you put or just some white people who were killed, because this is Nashville, it's not necessarily some high urban city. You put some white people who were killed around that truck and a brown person in that truck, then it's a whole different story, even though it should not be.
Yeah, yeah. You know what's funny, too, is that, like, Congress back in the late 19th century, at least on this topic, seemed to have a lot more sense than the Congress of now, right? Because, it was back in 1870, 1871, Congress passed the Enforcement Acts, the Ku Klux Klan Acts, to, and they actually used the words domestic terrorism. They literally defined the Ku Klux Klan at that time. This was the Congress of the late 19th century. I think people need to hear this, that defined the Ku Klux Klan as a domestic terrorist organization. And so that's why they actually passed laws, the Enforcement Acts, to end violence, terrorism against black people at that time. Can't do it. And here we are, and people like to say, oh, we're in the 21st century, like we're so much better than what was going on in the late 19th century, but they can't get it done. They cannot do it. Janice?
Well, there's been a regression in rights. You know, when I worked for Congressman Conyers, we wrote the hate crimes legislation in the late 80s and got it passed in the early 1990s. I think we got it passed in 1990. And when I look at what's happening here, you know, we've had Sandy Hook, we've had Waco, and these were white individuals, men. Here we are again, a 63-year-old man. the men who were going to try to kidnap my governor, Gretchen Whitmer,
Right.
these are Trump individuals. These are the people who have been, they are the base. And these are who he has been stoking the flames for, to these code words, the mega and all of that. I truly believe that this is someone who went out like that. You know, his man was not reelected. Therefore, he decided to just, you know, burn down the house, just like the occupant of 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue going to burn down everything before he left out.
He burned down the RV, right.
Exactly. It's a psychosis, and it is not the Republican Party of prior to Reagan. Prior to that, you had conservatives. This is not conservatism. This is something else that we're seeing, and the mere fact that these Republicans that are in office now would not even acknowledge that it was a free and fair election. It's not the same Republican Party, and it's really a shame that those individuals who've been serving in the House and in the Senate, the U.S. House and Senate, for decades will not stand up to this clown, because that's what he is.
Yeah. You know, real quick, I got you guys for several more minutes. Mo, starting with you, what do you think was the most underreported but still most significant story of 2020? What did we miss?
Easy for me. I think it's the threat of Donald Trump in this lame duck session. I think media has disregarded and dismissed what Trump was doing as far as all the lawsuits, all the willingness to subvert this election. And I think we need to really take a look at this, because if this election were actually closer, I think we can laugh it off and say he's crazy, whatever, because the election wasn't really that close in the final analysis. But if this election were closer, then you have someone who was willing to turn this country upside down and to become president, and we would become that proverbial banana republic. He was committing a slow-moving, non-violent coup, and he's not even done. And I don't think we've given it the due attention and seriousness that I think it really deserved, and how much in peril our democracy, our democratic republic, really is at this moment. And we've kind of dismissed it and laughed it off as like, oh, that's Trump being Trump. He's a narcissist, he's dangerous, but, you know, it's going to be okay. No, it's not going to be okay, because I think the blueprint has been created now for someone in a much closer election. We don't necessarily know that this won't happen again in 2024, just with someone else.
Right. Janice?
I think that a lack of attention to public policy and engagement and public awareness over the ethics and over the distribution and implementation of administering the vaccination for COVID-19 has not been touched. And as a policy person, that is what needs to be put in place. I had full faith in the speed and the rapidness in which we were able to get this vaccination created. But it's a big difference between a vaccine and a vaccination, and particularly to those communities like the African American community that is skeptical. There is no policy. And what's going to happen for those individuals who do not choose to be vaccinated? You know, I mean, when I started elementary school, you had to have all of your vaccinations. I think there were maybe 6 of them. Otherwise, you couldn't go to school. There's been no attention paid to the ethics around this, vaccinate or not vaccinate, and how are people going to be able to move through our society if they're not vaccinated, since this is supposed to be the cure-all. So I don't think that part of the story has been any attention paid to that, and there's been no policy. We know that there's been a lack of policy attention because of who's in the White House, but the media hasn't really talked about policy, public awareness, and engagement of those communities that are typically skeptical. And you've got young Republicans that are saying they're not going to get vaccinated. So how are we going to, as a country, survive and move forward if there's no policy and no community and public awareness engagement? That's not been covered.
I totally agree. It really hasn't. And when you have such large segments of the population refusing to get vaccinated or unvaccinated, then we can't achieve larger herd immunity. You just don't get out of it. It won't. It won't. You know, people are. I don't know. People are waiting for this magical moment. They think they can avoid the vaccine, and then we'll just magically get the herd immunity. That's the other missing. That's the big conversation that we totally missed. Is that even if you say if you have like 60% of black people saying, "Well, I refuse to take the vaccine," well, you know what? Then that's that the pandemic keeps going. It gets worse. It mutates. It gets even worse than it is right now, because then you have a huge, significant chunk of the population that's not vaccinated, that's not protected. I don't think people understand that. I think at some point, I think that'll probably be the big story 2021. There will be ways, and I'm talking to people now, and I know Mo, Janice, you're talking to those same people. People are going to get forced to get vaccinated in very subtle forms. You won't be. You want to get a job. You want to get a job. You want to work at that place.
Right.
Record of vaccination, please. Oh, you want to get on this plane and go visit your relatives? Record of vaccination, please. People will get the vaccine.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. I mean, there's no other way. And I'm hearing Biden say that we can't force people to take a vaccination. Well, then those people, in my view, are going to have to stay at home, because if they're not vaccinated, they cannot be allowed to move through society and start this all over again.
Right. Let me let you go. Janice, I want to have you get the last word. Janice Hazel, Michigan Chronicle, also political strategist up there in Detroit, Michigan, and Mr. Mo Kelly, who's been joining us by Skype from LA, joined us early this morning. Well, both of you are a little earlier in the morning compared to us on the East Coast. We got Pacific time, we got Central time, and then we got a bit of, because you're on Central, right? Detroit's on Central?
No, Michigan is Eastern. So
you're East. Oh, that's right. It shows you how much I know. You want to use this?
We're the Midwest, but we're Eastern.
I get there. You go. That's right. We got East Coast and West Coast joining, all combined here. East, Midwest, and West here on Reality Check's Roundtable. It's great having you on, Mr. Mo Kelly. It's good to see you as always. Can't wait to get out there in California. Can't wait to just travel and break bread and sit down with you all in Detroit. Just bringing up an idea. Actually, maybe we'll one day do a live remote broadcast from LA and also Detroit here on Reality Check. But thanks so much for joining us. Really always appreciate it. Happy New Year to you both. Happy Kwanzaa.
Happy Kwanzaa.
Take care now. All right, let's take a break, and when we come back on the other side, we have Pete Saunders is joining us next, urban planner, and we will talk about cities and states as we head into, or the fate of cities as we head into 2021, coming up next here on Reality Check, 96.1 FM, 900 AM, WURDradio.com, WURD TV, WURD app. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
At Champion Dentistry, we want to make sure your smile is as healthy as it is beautiful. Whether you're calling for a routine checkup, calling about a newly developed toothache, or interested in learning about cosmetic dentistry options. Our services include routine checkups, cosmetic dentistry, gum care, laser dentistry, and more. Champion Dentistry is in the Overbrook Farm section of the city, easily reachable by public transportation. Call 215-473-4717 to schedule an appointment today, or visit championdentistry.org, the House of Smiles.
Listen to Laborers Live.
We created the weekend. We created the 40-hour work week. We just want enough to feed our family, be able to send our children to college, and let our next generation do better than we did.
The people that might have forgot how important unionism is in a country like the United States. People now infringing on our 8-hour workday, trying to work people more than 8 hours without overtime, trying to work people without benefits. In the long run, everybody's getting fat paycheck except the worker. So this is really a wake-up call for America.
The struggle is continuous. Tune in to Laborers Live every Friday from 4 to 5 p.m. Sponsored by LESIT, the Laborers Employers Cooperation Education Trust of the Laborers District Council of Philadelphia and vicinity. Local 332, Sam Staten Jr. Business Manager. Local 57, Esteban Vera Business Manager. Local 135, Dan Woodall Jr. Business Manager. Local 413, James Harper Jr. Business Manager. The Laborers District Council, Ryan Boyer Business Manager, and Tony Staten, Executive Director of LESIT.
Monday through Thursday, keep it locked to WURD Radio. At 6 a.m., start your day with the Power Hour, hosted by Bishop Dwayne Royster and Reverend Mark Kelly Tyler. At 7, it's Wake Up with WURD with Solomon Jones. At 10 a.m., it's Reality Check with Charles Ellison. Then at 1 p.m., it's The Source, hosted by Andrea Lawful Sanders on Mondays, Tuesdays, and Thursdays, and the Black Women's Leadership Council on Wednesdays. At 4 p.m., it's Evening Words with Nick Taliaferro. Then at 7, it's Save Space with Sincerely Sarita. At 9 p.m., round up your day with Keeping It Real with the Reverend Al Sharpton.
Keep your dial locked
to WURD Radio, 96.1 FM and 900 AM WURD.
Streaming live on WURDradio.com and the WURD Radio app.
Or watch live on WURD TV via Facebook and YouTube. WURD Radio. Independent Black Media. It's the third day of Kwanzaa.
Habari gani.
Today's principle is Ujima, or self-determination. So light up the outside green candle on your Kinara and stay tuned.
This is WURD Radio.
96.1 FM and 900 AM WURD Philadelphia.
Streaming live on WURDradio.com, the WURD Radio app.
Or watch live on WURD TV via Facebook and YouTube.
WURD Radio. Independent Black Media. Reality check
With Charles Ellison right now on WURD Radio
and WURDradio.com.
All right, don't forget about the WURD Buy Black virtual holiday marketplace because it is Kwanzaa. So, you know, the holidays are extended for particularly those of us in the diaspora. Happy Kwanzaa to you. It is Ujima, but as we're practicing Ujima or manifesting it today, we can also do a little bit of that at our WURD, our exclusive WURD Buy Black virtual holiday marketplace. Go to WURDradio.com/marketplace or WURDWordworks.com/marketplace, and you can find black businesses that are selling holiday items and products for this season, for this very, very hard and difficult holiday season. But you can support black business while you're at it and keep those dollars circulating within the community. We always find ways to facilitate that sort of activity. We always do that every year with our big holiday extravaganza in person. We couldn't do that this year. I do miss that. It's one of my favorite times of the year, but we're doing that virtually. So go to WURDradio.com/marketplace, WURDworks.com/marketplace today when you get a moment. Joining us now is Pete Saunders. He is a longtime urban planner, a expert on all things cities. You can go. He's also publisher of the Corner Side Yard. It's a great blog that you can check out some of his musings there. The Corner Side Yard is at cornersideyard.blogspot.com. He also has a recent piece there entitled The Calculus of Black Housing Decisions. But anyway, we're going to get into that in a little bit. But we have Pete joining us by Skype on WURD TV. And you know, Pete, how are you doing too? Good to see you. Happy holidays as well.
Happy holidays to you. Thank you very much. Thanks for having me, and I'm glad to be here. I'm doing well.
All right, excellent. Yeah, we decided just to keep bringing you back, so because I like your insights from last time, and I like what I'm reading at the Corner Side Yard. Cities and states didn't receive any funding of any sort in the $900 billion stimulus that finally got signed last night by President Trump, which is troubling, right? I think there's some reasons behind that, some political reasons, but we'll get into that later. But I want your assessment of how key federal support is as a lifeline for cities, particularly in a moment like this, you know, needing to keep cities afloat. And then, you know, how are we thinking more deeply about how lack of revenue in a moment like this is really hurting cities? How much cities rely on constant revenue through tax receipts, through business tax receipts, real estate tax receipts, what that whole picture is looking like, and how much this lack of federal support in this latest pandemic relief is going to sting?
Yeah, it's really a great question, and it's really a serious concern for municipalities across the country. Municipalities, I work for a municipality in the suburbs of Chicago, and we are often dependent on property taxes, sales taxes, for as well as other fees that are assessed to people for things like water. So we're very dependent on those fees and taxes coming through. But really, ever since, you know, I may not look like it, but I've been in the game for a while now. So I've been a planner since about 1990. Wow. And I know that, you know, back in the 80s, there was a lot of federal support that used to come directly from the federal government to cities. And with the advent of the Ronald Reagan administration, a lot of that began to fall away. And it has never, ever, ever been recouped. And cities have tried to do the best that they can to recoup that. I'm not surprised that the most recent bill that was signed last night did not include any money. I know that here at this level where I work, we were looking at an opportunity for that to happen, but we weren't expecting it. More wishful thinking than anything, but that's the situation that many communities are in now.
Yeah, everything, just a lot of stuff we're going through, right? It just all started with Reagan. Reagan was the worst. I'm sorry. I just have to say that. It just was the worst.
Yeah.
Even when we were little kids at the time, everyone, you could feel it. You knew it. So he's like, what is up with this dude? But, do cities, which is it's funny, right? Because cities account for, like 90% of economic activity in the United States. I mean, they account for 90% of GDP when you think about it. Why? I don't get that. I mean, what's the rationale behind not supporting cities when they account for so? I mean, if cities fail, the economy, the whole country fails.
Yeah. Well, I think the rationale that was used at that time was that state or the federal government should not be involved in the direct involvement of things at the local level. If anything, it should be money that would be given from the federal government to states and then states to localities. Yeah. But really, I think it was an effort on the Republicans at that time to just begin the shrinkage of government that really has kind of starved cities. And pretty much ever since then, Republicans have been fairly anti-city. And I think that that was reflected in that belief as well.
Yeah. How is this lack of support, particularly with what cities have been struggling through and dealing with, grappling with during pandemic, how does that influence some of these trends that we talked about last time we had you on, like how cities are changing and the types of decisions that they have to make with respect to these population trends that are going on right now?
A lot of cities have tried to become much more entrepreneurial. A lot of cities have tried to find ways to raise revenues in unconventional ways, trying to raise revenues through, increasing tourism or, bringing a different level or style or type of amenities into different areas. A lot of places have really put their money on creating sort of destination areas, that can be a cultural, a good example is Navy Pier here in Chicago. I'm sure that there's a Philadelphia equivalent out there, but, in the 90s, Chicago spent hundreds of millions of dollars rehabbing a place that was an old lakefront pier and made it into a recreational destination. And that's become the kind of thing that many cities have had to rely on to just be able to generate extra revenue. So, like I said, much more entrepreneurial, but it also puts cities in competition with each other and cities in competition with their suburbs to try to make the money that they can to provide the services that they need to provide.
What you say that about that competition with each other in suburbs, how problematic does that become? That's interesting.
Well, a good example is in terms of sales tax dollars. A Walmart or some other big box that moves into a community is a big sales tax and property tax provider to that particular community. So what ends up happening is communities, they pursue that. They will offer incentives that are counter to what they may even want to offer to just try to have that business located into the area, into their community. So, adjacent communities might compete with each other for the same Walmart. And, big box retailers like them will often say, well, we know that we're competing between two, so we're just going to hold out for the best deal that we can get.
Right.
And that, extended means that many communities or regions don't get the best kind of development that they should.
Yeah, the best kind of development, best kind of deal, because then it's your taxpayer resource being used, that otherwise could have been used on programs that directly benefit those communities or those people.
Exactly.
You're absolutely right. Yeah.
And a lot of them end up being net losses too. A lot of a lot of communities end up giving away the store and think that they've got a great deal, but end up giving away the store.
Were you at all? We talked about mass transit before, Pete, and that's one of the reasons I want to bring you back on continually because you're a big fan of mass transit, as I am. I mean,
Yes.
if I could have a mass transit stop right in front of my house, I'd be good. I'd be one of the happiest persons on the planet. Like, if I had like a rail, like,
Oh,
and
yeah.
I grew up with that. I literally grew up with that. Like 300 yards down the street, the subway stop and a rail stop, and right up the street. I love that. And so, were you hopeful about the feds pitching in? I think it's like $15 billion for mass transit support. As the mass transit systems are on this undeniable death spiral right now, and it's real sad to watch. Like, because I worry about that. I wonder about that by the time. And I'll admit, I have not been back in a subway since this pandemic started. I miss that. But I know that there are considerable risks there. And I know my wife, who didn't grow up on subways, she's not having that. She's not right now. She's like, wait until it's time. But
Right.
how hopeful are you about that?
I'm hopeful within the new administration, the new incoming administration, that there will be some resources that are going to be given to mass transit. I'm not especially hopeful that anything of any real magnitude is going to happen out of the bill that was just signed last night. I don't know the details enough about it,
right.
But I did not expect much over the course of the Trump administration in terms of mass transit resources, and don't expect to see that in the last 3 weeks of the administration either.
Yeah.
But I do hold out hope that it could be something that becomes a focus in the next administration. I think that transportation investment can go a long ways towards stimulating economic growth and can right some of the wrongs that have happened in terms of inequitable investment in different communities. I mean, we have a historic pattern of many communities that have been destroyed by highways and trains that have cut through communities. And I think that there is an opportunity to have equitable transportation policies that can serve the people better, but also reverse the problems that were created.
Yeah. Going to your piece in the Corner Side Yard, I read this with some interest, the calculus of black housing decisions. We don't think about that enough. There's a special way that we as black people have to go about deciding on a house or deciding on what house to buy. It's a process, and I've seen this play out with myself and my wife over the years. I'm starting to see this play out with our older millennial kids. Our eldest daughter also just recently got married, is now looking at her and her husband looking at housing options and where to move, and it's playing out, particularly when they're having those types of conversations with white colleagues or white acquaintances that they have, and they notice that tension, like where the white colleagues and friends are like, oh, you have to think about that. Why do you have to think about that? So it's interesting how you recently wrote this calculus of black housing decisions. What does that mean?
Yeah, well, it just kind of struck me as I was thinking about how I'm not making any move right now, but I just thought about the fact that I look at my own family situation and where I live, where my sister and brother live, where my family lives, and how many other factors and variables that we have to consider or take into account when we're making housing decisions. One of them being that the legacy of white flight has had a long-term impact on what's happening in communities. So, and I think that there are expectations that white renters and buyers have that we as blacks just are not able to have. There's a reasonable expectation of appreciation wherever a white person goes, and there's not always that sense wherever a black person goes. And there's always a sense that that there's going to be the amenities that a white person is looking for in a particular community, but there's not always a sense that that's going to be the case where blacks live. I'm reminded, this goes back a few years, but when Michael Brown was shot in Ferguson, Missouri, and I wrote a story about it on my blog, and I had an interview with St. Louis alderman who's in the area right next to Ferguson, and she talked about the people who were moving from her North Side St. Louis neighborhood and into Ferguson, and how the decline of her ward in St. Louis. And she very pointedly said to me, and this is a black woman who's saying this, she says, no one wants to follow black people. And she pointed to the fact that her community had just become just abandoned and poorer, because historically there's not been that sort of escalator of people who've moved in that follow black people. And that's one of the things that I think we're very conscious of.
Yeah.
A lot of times we're wondering about, if we move, what impression are we going to make in the community? What kind of impact are we going to have in the community? And I think that people are trying to walk a fine line between being in a place that they're comfortable in, but being in a place that doesn't become, I guess, so comfortable that it's making others uncomfortable.
Yeah.
If I can put it that way. But it's a fine line that we're walking, and it's like I say, it's just a whole series of variables that we have to think about that others don't.
Yeah, it really is. What are what are some of those, like, and you talk about a little bit in your piece, like, kind of expound on that, kind of those tactical decisions, Pete, that it looks like we're making. I mean, beyond, there's sort of like those broader kind of philosophical decisions that we're making. There's also the decisions based on, are we going to feel comfortable if we move into a majority white neighborhood, right? Is that white neighborhood actually going to embrace us? And I watch that sometimes, white, just some black family that I have, and also black friends, when they make that decision to move into a majority white neighborhood, the neighborhood's majority, I'm like, okay, well, how long is this going to last? I always have that thought, and I wonder about that as I see that trend happening, because it's not always, you have to worry about that. You know what I mean? Especially as you raise kids in that community. Okay, well, what happens when my child becomes a teenager, starts driving? Like, if I move to a all-white suburb, which that that could become dangerous. How do I work through that?
Yeah, great point. On 2 different occasions in my lifetime, my parents moved into communities where we were among the first black families in a community. One time in Detroit, in a neighborhood when I was really small, and then another time here in the Chicago suburbs when I was in college. And in both instances, those communities changed very swiftly. And in both cases, I think in Detroit, it changed from virtually all white to all black within about 3 years. This is in the early 70s. And then same thing in the 90s in Chicago suburb. But there are other communities that don't experience that. I could look at a community like Oak Park, Illinois, which is a suburb of Chicago, or Evanston, Illinois, Shaker Heights, Ohio, outside of Cleveland, and I'm sure that Philadelphia has its own equivalent of a community that's embraced diversity and has welcomed African Americans moving into those communities.
Yeah.
I'm often a little skeptical about those, because I believe some of the people there believe in what I call, and what Hannah Nicole Jones has called, curated diversity. They like diversity only to the extent that everybody is represented, but we're still in control.
Right.
And so I think, we have to be wary of that, but it's something that happens. It's definitely something that happens, and we have to take into account.
Yeah, no, it truly is. And it's, I guess, and maybe this is for the next conversation about, okay, because I know this is something that you look at and you analyze very closely. Like, so, well, we still have, like, segregation is still kind of in practice, even though it's not legal anymore, it's not, like, sanctioned, but it's still in practice. That segregation being imposed through a series of policy decisions. Some of the segregation in terms of just the personal decisions. People like to be around what's familiar. So, like, my household, we made the decision, like, well, hey, we feel comfortable in a relatively majority black situation as far as the living situation is concerned, and just have that ability to find where that kind of comfortable living is, even though we do see it in the community where we live around us. Some of those amenities are missing. We got to go in the neighboring county to find like the better restaurants, for example, once the pandemic lit, which, and people comment on that all the time. So it's just one of those things. So it's like, okay, well, how do black people, particularly who are relatively middle class or who have that ability to get a home, how do they make do being in their own majority situation, the predominant situation? What are some of the decisions they have to make? And we see that in places like Prince George's County, Maryland, or DeKalb County, Georgia, and elsewhere up in Illinois, situations up there. They're making those kinds of decisions. But we'll get a little bit more into it next time we bring on Pete Saunders, urban planner, also publisher of the Corner Side Yard. Go to cornersideyard.blogspot.com. Learn more about that piece, The Calculus of Black Housing Decisions. Great piece, by the way, too, Pete. And he's going to join us here occasionally on Reality Check. We'll be bringing him back. Go to @PeteSaunders3, by the way, on social media, on Twitter, to get more of his thoughts. Thanks again, Pete. Always good seeing you. And Happy New Year to you.
Happy New Year to you. Thank you for having me.
All right. Take care. Take care. We'll see you again on the other side. All right.
Okay.
Let's take a break. And when we come back on the other side, we'll be talking with Kalila Harris of the Center for American Progress. We're going to talk about the nomination of Miguel Cardona for U.S. Secretary of Education. That will be the new education secretary in the Biden administration. What she thinks of that. She's the education expert. She's the executive vice president for education policy at the Center for American Progress. And so she's going to go a little bit into that here on Reality Check 96.1 FM, 900 AM, WURDradio.com, WURD TV, WURD app. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
This message is from the Philadelphia Department of Public Health. COVID-19 is still a threat in our communities, but we can all do something simple to help stop the spread. It's critically important to wear a mask or face covering whenever you're in public or around others. Yes, even while social distancing. Wearing a mask shows you care for yourself and your community and is essential to slowing the spread of COVID-19. So love yourself, love your neighbors, wear a mask.
Do you want to help kids in foster care? CASA Youth Advocates is seeking volunteers of color to advocate for the youth they serve. 50% of kids in the Delaware and Chester County foster care system are children of color, yet only 9% of CASA Youth Advocate volunteers are people of color. Children in foster care greatly benefit from advocates who look like and can relate to them. They desperately need more volunteers of color. Visit delcocasa.org for more info. That's www.delcocasa.org.
This WURD Kwanzaa vignette is brought to you by Temple University. Habari Gani from WURD Radio. The 7 days of Kwanzaa are dedicated to the Nguzo Saba, or the 7 principles of Kwanzaa. Today is the 3rd day of Kwanzaa, Ujima, or collective work and responsibility. Let's use today to build community with our neighbors, extended families, and co-workers. If you possess a certain skill set, consider sharing your skills with others. Passing knowledge on gives additional value to your community and strengthens your confidence in the subject. Encourage leadership among young people and lend an attentive, invested ear when they present ideas. For more information about Kwanzaa, visit WURDradio.com. This WURD Kwanzaa vignette was brought to you by Temple University. Temple University made major strides in HIV research, fought against COVID-19, committed $1 million to anti-racism initiatives, and more. As always, the owls shine no matter what.
Hi, I'm Council President Darrell Clark. As the holidays approach, we've all heard the news. A vaccine for COVID-19 is coming. However, now is not the time to let our guard down. As COVID-19 continues to spread, keep wearing your mask, practice social distancing, avoid large get-togethers. It will take time before we all get vaccinated. So until then, keep yourself, your family, and community safe. We will get through this pandemic together. Stay safe and stop the spread.
Reality Check with Charles Ellison right now on WURD Radio and WURDradio.com.
All right, welcome back to Reality Check 96.1 FM, 900 AM, WURDradio.com, and Philly proper. It is FM AM. Beyond Philly proper, it is WURDradio.com and WURD TV. WURD TV, you're watching us live. For those of you beyond Greater Philly, throughout the nation, throughout the world, you're watching us at Facebook.com/4WURD, through Facebook live stream or youtube.com/onWURD as well. Kalila Harris is an expert in K through 12 education. We've had her on before. Occasionally she'll join us here. She makes time for us here on Reality Check. She's Managing Director for K through 12 Education Policy at the Center for American Progress. She's joining us now via Skype from Washington, D.C. here on Reality Check. She's at the Center for American Progress, as you know, we partner up with to bring you this weekly CAP Corner. So go to AmericanProgress.org for more information. And they always provide us with a steady stream, a steady supply of experts like Kalila to talk to us about the issues of the day. Happy holidays to you, Kalila. Thanks so much for joining us. Appreciate you.
Likewise.
Excellent, excellent. So I want to get your thoughts on Miguel Cardona has been nominated as Education Secretary under the incoming President Biden. What's your initial thought about that? He's a former educator. He's a former teacher. So, you know, obviously it's a very diverse pick. There's a growing Latino population in the public school system. The black and brown population in the public school system especially is growing. It's outpacing the white population. So people are thrilled a bit about the diversity in terms of the pick, the selection. What are your initial thoughts? You think this is a good pick overall?
I think it's a great pick. Dr. Cardona is not only a Latino male and brings that perspective. He grew up in the projects.
Mm-hmm.
He is a classroom teacher, a principal, superintendent, and he also doesn't anchor his educational philosophy in any of the education reform or anti-reform camps. So he's a great choice in terms of wanting to bring folk under the big tent of how we improve schools and ensure quality for all students. So I'm a fan of the pick.
Yeah, fan of the pick, and but you know, at the same time, we have to understand. I mean, he's got a huge job ahead of him. Talk a bit about that, Kalila, because you've been watching that, especially over the past few years. The erosion. I mean, there's really been the steady erosion of the education department. And federal education policy. What state is the Department of Education in right now? I mean, it's not good.
It's not good. There's definitely been an erosion of not only the team in terms of gaps in hiring and filling positions that are slated to protect the civil rights of students attending America's schools. Dr. Cardona does have a mountain to climb, both in rebuilding the department, but also reinstating or re-envisioning policies to protect the civil rights of children. Transgender children's rights have been trampled on. We have not been seeing the level of inspection of claims of discrimination related to school discipline. We have not, frankly, been on our P's and Q's when it comes to supporting traditional schools based on the current secretary's nonsensical focus on vouchers and taking public money out of public schools. Dr. Cardona also does not have a long track record of being a superintendent or a state chief. He just became chief last year. He was an assistant superintendent before that. And so he too will have a learning curve. But as far as the intel says, he's a smart man and he's open to feedback. A couple of the folk I spoke to about him pointed out that after board meetings, he would himself come out of the, from behind the podium and meet with parents, talk to community members, which had been unheard of in Connecticut. So there's hope, but there is a lot of work to be done, particularly as it relates to racial and linguistic equity.
Yeah, do you worry he's going to be spending so much time on trying to rebuild the department over the next few years, and that, because there's no guarantee that we'll get a second Biden administration. I mean, President-elect Biden has hinted himself that he's probably just doing one term. I mean, so there's an expectation that his vice president, Kamala Harris, would be the one to kind of take his place in 2024, but there's no guarantee on that, right? So it's like, hey, you spend the next few years just focused on rebuilding the education department. You don't even get a chance to get to the point where you could start rolling out these really ambitious and needed essential reforms to make education, K through 12 education, better.
Well, there are a number of things that are happening right now. Senator Lamar Alexander will no longer be the ranking member in the Senate over the Senate Help Committee. He will have an administration in terms of the executive branch that is supportive of efforts that he's undertaken. I think the President-elect and Vice President-elect Harris as well have clearly articulated a laser-like focus on equity and also on creating the schools that our children deserve. When they talk about things like a tripling of Title I, though I don't think Title I is necessarily the best place to triple those funds, but and they talk about rebuilding the Office for Civil Rights. There are a lot of people who are equipped and ready to go. As you know, I served in the Obama administration. Right. We cannot take for granted that the career employees who are at the Department of Education, despite Betsy DeVos's edict to resist, that they were in fact resisting her.
Yeah.
So I don't think that it is that will be the mountain in terms of the rebuild. Yeah. I do think in this environment where we don't know just yet, we won't know until next week whether or not we have a 50-50 split in the Senate or a Democratic majority, that Congress is going to be able to move legislation, especially in light of the continuing pandemic of COVID and the longstanding pandemic of racism.
Yeah, you know, the other thing too, I wonder, and I know some people are asking this question about Cardona. You know, they're very hopeful about him, but they're also worried. You kind of sort of hinted at this a little bit too. We're trying to address those concerns. This is it's a massive federal bureaucracy. Cardona doesn't have like a lot of expertise or experience. Let's put it like this: experience just yet in running large organizations. How's he going to be able to do this in this particular moment with an agency this big?
Well, I gotta say, people who insist that in order to be a big bureaucrat, you need to have been a big bureaucrat don't make very much sense to me, especially people who are calling for change. I think he will bring a fresh lens, and it's what he needs to learn. So we won't be in a situation where someone is coming in kind of from a know-it-all standpoint, which is why I offer that folk in Connecticut are very happy with how he engages community. We saw during the pandemic unfolding for COVID that he did a great job of engaging community members and educators in terms of whether or not schools reopen. Didn't go as far as to say that they must reopen, but was very clear that every local context is different across the state, and he would yield to the will of people who are closer to the ground. I think for too long we've had federal policymakers who were doing policy to people instead of with people, and that alone will make him a great Secretary of Education.
Mm-hmm. You know, so how do we get to a point, Kalila, right, where because the K through 12 conversation during 2020 has been consumed with, okay, should schools reopen or not? And that's about it, right? You know, we went through this whole election. I think you and I have talked about it before where, you know, we went yet again through another whole election cycle where there was no conversation, no big national or urgent national conversation about K through 12 education, about the state of that. How do we finally make K through 12 education priorities a priority, a front and center top 3 priority as far as, you know, what's needed, you know, what's needed to make, you know, especially as we're trying to recover from pandemic, like education is an important pillar of that. And it seems like the national discourse, I mean, we've been talking for weeks now on this program about the illiteracy crisis in the country. You know, so over half of adults don't read or can't adequately read above a 6th grade proficiency level. That's a crisis. And that obviously speaks to the failure of American K through 12 public education. So what do you think we need to do to transition finally to making K through 12 education a priority?
You know, I was just reading a Twitter thread yesterday where a gentleman talked about the fact that in the United States, we have a lot of care for emergent issues, but lack empathy for long-term issues. Yeah. And, you know, we will jump in and save someone from a burning flame, but we won't take the steps to make sure that the house is adequately built so it doesn't go up in flames for minor issues. And I think that's what we've seen in the case of education policy. It is something that is not immediate. And so we have politicians who are being politicians. It's not sexy to focus on something that should have a long-term impact. So it's going to be accountability. We're going to have to put the same effort into holding the next administration accountable that we did in getting the next administration elected. And cannot rest on our laurels. And I do believe some of this happened during the Obama administration. We can't rest on our laurels that we won and then keep it moving until 2024. It is urgent. And there is no other evidence than the millions of children who don't have access to broadband, as well as the hundreds of thousands of children who no one has heard from since March. And that is a problem, and it is urgent. And so we need to treat it like an emergency and make sure that schools going forward are preparing our students for the future workforce. And that doesn't only mean looking up when they're in the 11th and 12th grade and saying you need a trade. This has to be a continuum from pre-K to 12 and then on to post-secondary choices.
You know, with Cardona, I don't want a controversial education secretary like what you had with Betsy DeVos. You know, so she was constantly in the news headlines because of the controversy, the volatility of the conversation around her. But I am looking for an education secretary who's much more vocal, because I think that's also been a habit of previous administrations. Well, I don't know, Arne Duncan was fairly vocal. You could say he was a fairly active, vocal education secretary, but that always seemed to be like a placeholder position, cabinet position, right? And I guess the case was, you know, you just remain quiet and you just run the bureaucracy. I'd like to see someone a bit more ambitious, a bit more vocal, really bringing education department or education policy priorities to center stage. I mean, what sort of advice do we give Cardona in that case? Like, hey, Cardona, how do you make this more high profile? Like, I want the education department, I'm sure you do too, to be as high profile as, I don't know, the Defense Department, right? Yeah, I mean, it should be at that level.
Yeah. You know, Arne Duncan, as well as Secretary King, when he picked up from Arne, began really zero in on racial justice, zero in on disrupting the school to confinement pipeline, making sure that we were really thinking about the number of students with special needs who were then being kicked out of school, who were then becoming incarcerated. So I think they set a model. They also had the 2008 recession where they needed to rapidly get schools back online after deep underfunding from the state level. Dr. Cardona has done a great job of being vocal for the right reasons in Connecticut. That is fact. You can Google him. And what I like about him is that his vocal nature has not been as a matter of controversy. It's been as a matter of leadership. He has not shied away from pulling the trigger, but he does indeed take time to slow down and engage a community in his decision-making and being deliberate. What we don't want is someone who is on fire and saying lots of things, but making no policy and making no change, having no impact. So I think that he really should maintain the drumbeat he has been, be deliberate, engage community, and be vocal about why he's making policy or why he's making decisions that he's making. And follow the lead of everyday people who want to make sure their kids have quality schools. Yeah,
no, I think that's correct. We've been talking with Kalila Harris, who's Managing Director for K-12 Education Policy at the Center for American Progress. Go to americanprogress.org for more information, and you can check out some of her latest analysis at americanprogress.org is the Biden administration must commit in the first 100 days to building education policies with community, not for it. So check that out when you get it. That was recently actually published. You can go to americanprogress.org. You can go to the 74million.org, which is an education publications focused on education issues. She's joining us here today on Reality Check. We got to get a chance to, at one point, talk with you beyond the education secretary, but keep talking with you, Kalila, about how we continue to make K-12 education a priority. Thanks so much. It was good seeing you. Good talking to you again. I'm sure we'll be talking more in 2021. We'll see you on the other side. Happy New Year to you.
Happy New Year.
All right, excellent. All right, let's take a break. We'll come back, open phone lines at 2-1 so you can respond or react to some of this conversation we've had this Monday morning. 215-634-8065, 866-361-0900 here on Reality Check. We'll be right back.
He's back.
This is Reverend Al Sharpton.
Keeping it real
with the Reverend Al Sharpton.
In times like these, we have to stay connected.
At a brand new time.
Monday through Thursday, 9 p.m. till midnight.
I'm excited that Keeping It Real returns to WURD.
Keeping it real.
With the Reverend Al Sharpton.
Monday through Thursday, 9 p.m. till midnight.
This program is pre-recorded.
No phone calls, please.
Keep it locked to WURD 96.1 FM, 900 AM. WURDradio.com.
Monday through Thursday, keep it locked to WURD Radio. At 6 a.m., start your day with the Power Hour, hosted by Bishop Dwayne Royster and Reverend Mark Kelly Tyler. At 7, it's Wake Up with WURD with Solomon Jones. At 10 a.m., it's Reality Check with Charles Ellison. Then at 1 p.m., it's The Source, hosted by Andrea Lawful Sanders on Mondays, Tuesdays, and Thursdays, and the Black Women's Leadership Council on Wednesdays. At 4 p.m., it's Evening Words with Nick Taliaferro. Then at 7, it's Save Space with Sincerely Sarita. At 9 p.m., round up your day with Keeping It Real with the Reverend Al Sharpton.
Keep your dial locked
to WURD Radio, 96.1 FM and 900 AM WURD.
Streaming live on WURDradio.com and the WURD Radio app.
Or watch live on WURD TV via Facebook and YouTube. WURD Radio. Independent Black Media.
Reality Check
with Charles Ellison right now on WURD Radio
and WURDradio.com.
All right, phone lines are open, 215-634-8065. Toll free is 866-361-0900. Also, don't forget about the WURD Buy Black virtual holiday marketplace, WURDradio.com/marketplace, WURDworks.com/marketplace. You can support Black businesses. You can actually manifest. You can actually practice the principles of Kwanzaa by participating in the WURD Radio virtual holiday marketplace, WURDradio.com/marketplace, WURDworks.com/marketplace. Put your money where your mouth is as far as those Kwanzaa principles are concerned. And as far as what you're seeing happening during this pandemic, Black businesses have indeed taken a hit. So continue to support them. But Black businesses are also here to support us. So let's keep that flowing. Let's keep that going. WURDradio.com/marketplace, WURDworks.com/marketplace today. 215-634-8065. Toll free 866-361-0900. Here on Reality Check. 215-634-8065. Toll free it is 866-361-0900. Phone lines are open. Actually going to be open into the 12 o'clock hour. So we will, before we talk, we actually have Dr. Christopher Colbert's going to be joining us next. So I'm going to be talking about steps, safety measures that people should be putting in place as we continue through this holiday season. I still see a lot of people traveling out there. I had no idea why. I don't know why people are traveling during the pandemic. I don't get it. Just don't get it. So, but people are doing it. People still out there, out and about. And or doing. I mean, we still have to be out and about to a certain degree, but the actually traveling, almost near like pre-pandemic levels. I just don't. When people know the risks that are involved in that. So Dr. Chris Colbert will come on and talk with us a little bit about that. Also, he took the vaccine recently, so he's going to talk about that, his experiences with that, what he's feeling, how he's feeling like. We're having, obviously, that conversation, that there are questions still surrounding the vaccine. We'll continue to have that conversation here on Reality Check, and also, debunking any myths surrounding that, because there's still a lot of misinformation, deliberate disinformation out there. Always think about the source of that information. Always remember where that information is coming from, who that information is coming from, who's cooking up that information, or certain people that you rely on as experts or rely on as trusted sources. Where are they getting their information, right? So you should even ask me where I'm getting my information at times. And so since every now and then we'll go through these fact check sessions, and I'll tell you where I got it from. But we have to be very mindful of that and very careful of it, and not just in turn with respect to the vaccine, but especially as we head into a new administration. We're headed into a new year. and all sorts of new political challenges, and we're trying to get away from how, I mean, we literally had government sanctioned. We had the past several years of government sanctioned disinformation, like a president who was deliberately spreading disinformation, which is very dangerous and is very destructive. And so that's something that we need to transition out of. We need to cleanse ourselves of. We need to exercise ourselves of as quickly as possible as we head into the new administration, as we head into 2021. 215-634-8065, toll free, 866-361-0900. Let me go to Mr. Leon out of Center City, who's calling in for a reality check. Mr. Leon?
How you doing there, my friend?
How you doing, sir? Happy holidays.
Okay, same to you. You know, about 40 years ago, I was about to run for state rep in a community where I was active in the struggle in our community. And the state rep in the office told me that if we see you getting a lot of support from the people, we're going to have to dirty you up somehow. So, saying that, Charles, I would like at some time to be engaged in a discussion just among black folks. And the question would be how do we develop leadership in the black community?
Yeah.
And whether or not it's true that what we have now is just a pecking order, where you wait your turn, you be good, and something come up, and it's now your turn. And also how we, part of that, I'm sure you realize, Charles, part of that is messing up somebody's reputation, like the guy proposed to do to me, if I gain some sort of prominence among the voters, okay? So isn't that what it is? That, okay, so-and-so just resigned. Who's going to get his seat or her seat? And then they look down and they say, well, who's the next in line?
Right.
But whether or not, is that really how we develop our leadership, political leadership? I dare them to engage in that discussion.
I sense that, and thank you for that, Mr. Leon. Thank you for sharing that experience. And I know that your experience is not rare. I've heard it quite a bit. I've heard it from quite a bit of people over the years. And yeah, I've never ran for or never attempted to run for political office, but at one point, they had a few people who were, who had approached me about doing something like that, and another group of people were like, well, I really didn't have any interest. But then another group of people saying, well, he's not in line. I bristle at that statement. I've heard that countless times. Oh, well, that person, you have to stand in line, you have to kiss a ring. And that's not change. That's not the change, the desperate kind of change that this particular community needs. I'll be very frank with you, Mr. Leon. I appreciate you sharing it. When black people engage in that type of politics, that is white supremacy. That is white supremacy. Let me explain how it's white supremacy. Because we've worked hard and we've struggled and we've fought for so many years, and we have people before us work and struggle and bleed, fight, die, for us to get away from the exclusivity of white politics, the way that, to get away from the way that white people practice the very oppressive and very harmful, very destructive ways that white people practice politics, right? That's what this was all about. We were getting away from that. We would, practice a new kind of politics and raise up a new breed of public servants. But then we're doing the exact same thing. There are a lot of us out there doing the exact same thing, Like, like, for example, we fought, ancestors fighting so they could sit at a lunch counter, so they could crack through, literally break through the politics of exclusivity and places like exclusive whites-only country clubs, and here we are doing the exact same things to ourselves. We're only certain, exclusive members of a certain group or a certain clique or a certain social sect or a social crowd or people who have been hand-picked are the only ones who can participate in this in this particular franchise or can participate in the process of change. And frankly, that is white supremacy. That is white supremacy. Black and they're probably black politicos, black people who do that, who may be listening to this program right now and are probably frowning and like, what is he saying? Like, no, it is white supremacy because it's the exact same thing. We were supposed to do it differently, people. We are supposed to be doing it differently, and we're not. And then we wonder and we sit back, stupefied and scratching our heads and wondering why things are not working or why things are not working out. Because we're not truly and genuinely encouraging that kind of change agentry, that change agency. I made up a word just a minute ago, and I didn't mean to do that. Change agency, and that's what black politics to me is all about. I remember having this conversation. I remember taking a quick shuttle flight from D.C. to New York years ago when I was going for a meeting of some folks, some black intellectuals, some black political intellectuals. I think it was the Rockefeller Foundation was holding it, and lo and behold, in the seat next to me in the flight was the late great Professor Ron Walters, who he was one of my favorite. He was quietly mentoring me. Never knew it, through some of the books, like the book that he wrote, Black Presidential Politics in America, and he was like the closest advisor to Jesse Jackson when he made his presidential runs. And he was explaining the same thing. I was just saying, I said, when I was like 14 years old, I read Black Presidential Politics in America. He was like, man, I didn't know anybody read that book. But, it had an influence on me because, he talked about basically, he's like, black politics has always got to be about change. It can't be about we're just basically operating in white political paradigms with black faces. That you can't. That's not the way it's supposed to be. That's not how we got into this thing for the first place. I'm sorry, Mr. Leon, are you still there?
Yeah, I'm still here. I'm enjoying your conversation.
Yeah, no. So what do you think about? I'll give you kind of some last words on that before we head into the 12 o'clock hour.
Well, like I said, that we need to be able to come together as a community and discuss that. What kind of leaders do we want? Do we really want the kind that we've been having? Or shouldn't we come together with some kind of plan to change that? Get all these seats coming up, judges, DAs, you name it. It's how we going to decide who gets those things? Will it just be the pecking order?
Right. Yeah, we have to get away from that.
Yes.
We do. I agree with you. I agree with you completely. We have to get away from that. And we can talk more about it, too, as we go on to the other side into the noon hour. Thank you, Mr. Leon, for that.
Thank you.
Because I think that's, thank you. Thank you for sharing that, and thank you for triggering, because I know it's triggering some thoughts about we need to, hopefully we can operate differently. You always talk about the reboot, the refresh when we head into a new year. And that's the kind of reboot or refresh I'm looking for, is getting away from, I like how Mr. Leon framed that, getting away from pecking order politics. That's the kind of politics that's kept us down for so long. So why do we keep on, why do we insist on doing that? Why do we have older leaders or leaders in the older generation who don't have a process for grooming and passing the baton to the younger generation? We still have this very wide generation gap. First there's the disconnect, I've always said it, between the grass tops, the folks who were in that public service realm, who were the elected officials, who were the policymakers, people in our community, and the grassroots, people who really are always the impetus for that real change. The people who are going through those situations and this doesn't just apply to the black community or black people. I mean, this is the problem overall with American politics and American policymaking. Just as we were having that discussion a while ago earlier on in this program about, for example, why are we getting so salty over a $2,000 payment versus a $600 payment? Why is it suddenly it's a problem when we're talking about direct payments or direct relief to individual American households or individual Americans. And it's just the very, sort of warped, tragic, and destructive way we operate in our politics. But, some of that same kind of mindset, it festers like a disease, like a virus inside black communities like Philly. And so we do the hopeful thing is we do see a very aggressive, ambitious, change-thinking class of younger black politicos or black political change agents that are trying to crack through that, and they're using the tools at their disposal now, tools that we have now that we didn't have, say 40, 50 years ago, to crash onto that scene. But the one thing I say that too with some caution, because it's like, don't just disrupt systems or disrupt institutions for the sake of disrupting, right? For the sake of just making noise, because there's some folks who do that. And so you have to be very intentional and deliberate and making sure that every step that you're taking in that process is towards some positive outcome. It has to be done with the best intentions at heart. It can't just be, oh, you're just jumping onto the scene because you want to prove something. I don't care about people proving anything in politics. That's why I tell you, I always tell you, I don't care. I'll read news headlines sometimes and I'll see about, first black elected this, first black elected. I don't care. I want to know, can they get the job done? That's all I care about. That's all really the community should care about. So it's, and getting the job done is what results in a positive outcome for us. Right. And so I don't like disruption just for the sake of disruption. I want to know, is that going to lead to a common good? And in some cases it does, and in some cases it doesn't. People don't have those true intentions or those good intentions at heart. It's a conversation, like Mr. Leon said, that we must have. Let me take a break. When we come back, we can talk more about it. On the other side, we head into the noon hour with more phone calls, with more open phone lines. 215-634-8065, toll free 866-361-0900. The time is 11:59 and the temperature is 45 degrees in Philadelphia. This is sponsored by the Beach Companies, serving the community for 30 years. For more information, check out beachcompanies.com. They have a black business directory there too, by the way. All right, let's take a break. Phone lines are open, 215-634-8065, toll free 866-361-0900 here on Reality Check. Let's take a break and we'll be right back.
Want the latest in Word swag? Check out the shop tab on WURDradio.com. Hoodies, tees, and more in a variety of colors. The shop tab on WURDradio.com. Show the world that you're all about black. Talk Media. Word Radio presents the following wellness tip to support our listeners with mindfulness and motivation as we continue to navigate the pandemic together.
Hi, this is Halana, your resident health and wellness coach with tips to help you stay well. Let's talk about eating mindfully. Often we are rushing from moment to moment and we hurry through our eating like it's checking off an item on our to-do list. Each day, for each meal, let's commit to doing these 3 simple things to activate our mindful eating experience. Number 1, slow down. Number 2, eat while you're sitting down. And number 3, chew each bite 20 to 30 times. You can do it. Eating mindfully is something we can all do to support our overall health and digestion. Go ahead and try it for your next meal today. Stay well with Word. Happy living.
Stay well with Word. Connect with us at WURDradio.com. It's the 3rd day of Kwanzaa. Habari Gani. Today's principle is Ujima, or self-determination. So light up the outside green candle on your Kanara and stay tuned. This is Word Radio, 96.1 FM and 900 AM WURD Philadelphia. Streaming live on WURDradio.com, the Word Radio app, or watch live on Word TV via Facebook and YouTube. Word Radio. Independent black media. Reality Check with Charles Ellison right now on Word Radio and WURDradio.com.
Okay, phone lines are open at 215-634-8065, toll free 866-361-0900 here on Reality Check. 215-634-8065, toll free 866-361-0900 here on Reality Check. A lot to talk about, of course. You know, one of the things we do here, and it's sad to say, but we do here routinely on Reality Check. We remind people about the homicide numbers that are happening in the city of Philadelphia because, you know, who else is going to do it? Because, you know, definitely the city's newspaper of record, the Philadelphia Inquirer, never does it. You never see it on the front page. You know, they should have that kind of emblazoned across the front headline every day, but they're not going to do it. But 489 homicides, murders thus far in the city of Philadelphia. That's a very high. That's higher than most cities. Philadelphia is breaking not only records for itself, but it's breaking records in relation to other big cities. There are not even that many murders in the city of nearly 9 million further to our north, New York City. So Philadelphia actually has more homicides in New York City than other cities that are larger than it, like New York and Los Angeles. 489, we're about 11 homicides away from 500 by the time we reach the end of this week, by the time we reach New Year's Day. So let's you know, hopefully no one else is murdered between now and New Year's Eve, or from now till eternity. But, you know, I know that that's, some people will say that that's wishful thinking, but, you know, I just think it's positive thinking. So we should, you know, try to hope for as much here in Philadelphia. But 39% murders, 39% above where they were this time in 2019. 215-634-8065, toll free 866-361-0900. Thanks so much for folks on Facebook Live. Good morning to you, Nasir Butler. Good morning, Malcolm White. Well, good afternoon now, everyone. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Good afternoon, Malcolm White, listening always from, watching too, from Westmount area. Shalata Sankofa, blessings back at you. Thank you so much. Phyllis Williams, good afternoon. Good afternoon, Renee Mills. Kenneth Simmons is saying, stop blaming the white man. What are we doing about it? Okay. Tom Bryant, good morning. Good afternoon. Good brother back at you, Tom Bryant. Good afternoon, Diane Fassett. Good afternoon, Norm Magawan, who says that they were a little worried about the Georgia Senate races, but then the Republicans refused to increase the amount of money that people would receive. Now I think it's a slam dunk for the Democrats. Feeling good about that. Okay. All right. Norm's feeling good about the Georgia Senate races. We're looking at those runoffs very closely on January 5th. Jeremy Costa, nice work. How do we call in? 215-634-8065, 866-361-0900. There you go. Ken Simmons chiming in again. Teach black people to fish and not wait for others to do for them. Use your platform to teach our people to do for self. And that was yesterday's, right? That was yesterday's Kwanzaa principle, if I'm not mistaken, right? Yeah, yesterday's Kwanzaa principle was all about that. It was about self-determination. That was Kujichagulia, right? So yeah, thanks so much, Kenneth Simmons, talking in the legacy of Nguza Sabo. So thank you for that. Donna Fisher, great afternoon to you. Good afternoon to you. Thanks for the music selection. We'll tell Troy that. AJ, it's thank you. Good afternoon to you. It's antiquated when the people who are like these individuals need help. Good afternoon, Cedric Milner. Greetings to you. We should all be getting at least $5,000 to $10,000. These billionaires don't care. Again, we're all being played. Rich getting richer. Most of those dollars going overseas. Vote them out. Sister is right. Enjoy peace. Shirley Jones was liking what Janice Hazel was saying. Anita Winters Green. Thank you for that. Says the program is most informative. Jared Foyle saying he can't hear us on 900 AM. So not know what that means. They're saying that, in fact, Phyllis Williams also saying that there's been no sound on 900 AM, but sound on Facebook. Go to 96.1 FM, y'all. So, you know, AM's getting more and more analog, as they say these days, but definitely check that out. Let me go to Joseph out of Massachusetts, who's calling in for a reality check. Joseph, what's good? Happy holidays.
Good morning, Mr. Ellis, or good afternoon by now. I have to call in with your last caller. You know, we as black people, we do it to ourselves. We shoot ourselves in the foot. Anything the white man tell us, we won't even investigate to see if it's true. We just believe it because deep in our heart, believe the white man ice is colder than the black man ice. To your last caller, you know, we could pick great, better leaders. Let me show you how corrupt we do our own self. I protest in front of the United Nations, everything. One police plaza, everything. I tell them what happened to me. I wrote letters, enemy of the state, all this and that. I go to the NWC convention, protest in Philly 2004, South Beach, Miami 2002, New York 2000. Been there, done that. I don't know what intelligence agency some of these black leaders about me, but apparently they believe it. I go to give Dorothy Heights a letter at the convention and her bodyguard, make it look like I'm a criminal, like I'm a gangster. At least they can give you the benefits of the doubt, but the first thing, they'll like to insult you. You see a psychiatrist, you take medication, do you need to see a social worker or something? Because they already get it from the white man. He's this, he's that. Instead of giving you the benefits. You know who was the only righteous people that gave me the benefits of the doubt, Mr. Ellison? In Cuba. Cuban immigration, they say, well, if this is all true that you say happening to you, which it seems plausible, you're a very important person. They give you the encouragement to keep fighting these people. As long as I don't want to harm myself, I don't want to harm nobody, the typical psychiatrist stuff, they pull on you. Well, give the person the benefits of the doubt. But we black people don't even get no benefits of the doubt. And last point, in Cuba, the way they pick political leaders, you don't just run for office. The community elects you. Some good deeds you did in the community. Look at our black leader, John Lewis, a good man. But it's been a long time since we had to ride in the back of the bus. Maxine Waters, been an LA City Councilwoman at the age of 28. Sheila Jackson Lee was a congresswoman since I was living in Houston back in 1989 and 94. And every time she's always talking about, this is it. Change is coming. You name them. They all been there too long. The perks are too good. Your buddy over there, your comrade Al Sharpton, he gets $1.5 billion by National Action Network every year. He paid $14 for a condo, penthouse on Fifth Avenue. These black people they gotta know life goes on. The King Lion, the head lion of the savannah, his days are numbered. Everybody's days are numbered. At least show some respect and give the young people a chance. But when the white man see you got a good idea, he don't want to see black people rise up because I know what works. I lived all over. He tells black people anything and they believe him. Anyway, you have a nice day. I had to call in and bring my thing.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you. All right. Thanks so much, Joseph. Some things explain a lot. I hadn't heard from Joseph in a while. Joyce out of Germantown calling for a reality check. Joyce?
Hi, Charles. Good morning. Good afternoon.
Hey, good afternoon. All right.
I wanted to find out, how does the city council elect its city council president? Because Darrell Clark, as long as he's been there, he doesn't have a whole lot to show for what he's done. There's more giveaways in North Philly than it is forget. And when I say that, I'm saying it because when he's in, you get a turkey for Thanksgiving, you get a turkey for Christmas. But then when you talk about, your house is falling down and something is really wrong, he cannot help you with trying to fix any of that. He passes you off to somebody. So, I mean, that is, to me, is very incorrect. Very incorrect.
Yeah, I mean, the council president, that, the council president is selected by the other members, is voted in by the other members of the city council. So that's how the city council president, is determined. There's a whole kind of process, some of it in public, and some of it, obviously there's a lot of negotiation and wrangling that takes place behind the scenes. It's not in the public's sight, but you feel like that should be done differently.
Yes, I truly do. Because with people running, I know he has to run for committee person or council person, but then when you run for a council person, does that mean give everything to me and give you nothing? I mean, it's, to me, that is really where Philadelphia runs.
That's interesting. What would you say too, Ms. Joyce, as far as a lot of this, and I always say this, I know people have a lot of problems with, even from time to time I have issues with city council, but then the voter turnout is so low. What explains that? Why are people still, I'm sure you turn out and you vote for or against, your particular council member, like you were talking about, City Council President Darrell Clark. But what's the, a lot of people do complain about city council, but the voter turnout never matches the level of complaint that I hear about city council.
I work all over the city doing what I do. And what happens is you hear the same complaint. Nobody sees anybody until it's time to vote or when they're running for something. And hey, I might help you with a plumber right now, or I might help you to help get your roof fixed. But after that, there's nothing. It's like going into a vat. And, it's like the silos for the wheat and the corn, even that gets boring and tiring. But it does choke the air out if you get stuck in there.
Yeah.
So I think it's time for that city council. And I do not see much coming from the young lady that took over Janie Blackwell's seat either. Ms. Gautier, I believe. I mean,
Jamie Gautier, yeah.
She hasn't done anything.
So you feel like she needs a little, this has been like her first full year, right? Yeah? No, her second full year.
But
yeah.
I've heard her a few times during council meetings wanting to give somebody a shout out. So give them a citation.
I know people bristle at that too. You guys, people do bristle at that. I think that, for example, I didn't hear council make much in those final weeks before it went on holiday break say anything about the murder situation, the violence situation.
They're still not saying it. They're still not.
Yeah, I know we had special committee hearings, but you got to set a tone. And I know that the council president, he's bristled when I've talked about this before, but I've seen other places do it. If I had been city council, I'd be like, hey, listen, you know what? We're almost at 500 homicides here. Maybe we need to extend the session of council. We need to do emergency session. We need to figure this thing out. Like the fact that there's no citywide joint task force, I don't think council should be going on a holiday break, or at least announcing it when you're in the middle of a serious violence crisis going on right now. You already got the pandemic, and obviously we're taking a hit on the chin all across the board on that, but you almost reaching 500 homicides, and it's just optically, it just does not look good. And then people wonder, and then I don't understand. I don't understand. I don't understand the psychology behind that. I don't understand why. And then why, members of council get, in their feelings when people accuse them of not caring, but then people see stuff like that, and they're like, well, how do you expect people to react? If you want to break, we near 500 homicides, and you're not saying anything during just the regular standard council sessions, like even setting aside some special time to say anything. He set aside, which I thought was very interesting, right? And some people liked when he did it. He set aside extra time. He took council president prerogative to make a statement about the proposal he was trying to chisel for real estate developers with respect to property tax abatement, et cetera. But no such thing. He didn't do any such thing with the violence. I don't understand that.
Because it does not deal with any of their relatives or any of their family members.
All right. Ms. Joyce, let me let you go because I can take on some. No, I appreciate you calling in and sharing that. Let me go to, I got to take on other calls here. I want to go to George out of Center City, who's calling in for. You see what I'm saying, folks? I don't think I'm being unreasonable there when I say that. I really don't think I'm being unreasonable there. To me, it's all about, leadership, or part of leadership is setting a tone to the conversation, and just showing, showing how urgent the situation is. And I think people would appreciate that, and they would also follow City Hall's lead. You don't see that. You don't see that coming out of the mayor's office. You definitely don't see that coming out of City Council. It's just another day in Philly. I know people are upset about the violence, but I think people want to see more. Let me go to George out of Center City, who's calling in for a reality check. George? George? Hey, what's happening?
Listen, I'd be glad when you bring those state senators and those state representatives that you promised last week to bring on to explain why they give that money out, do the paperwork for people to get their rent And then
Yeah, we
once
had
paid off.
Joanna McClinton on last week
Well,
about that.
she was a
talked
waste
about
of
that.
time because she admitted she didn't know nothing about it. And the
Yeah.
very next time that they do that, this girl is going to handle it. Well, you should have handled it then. Let me tell you what happened on that day, Charles. It was 2 elected officials, black in the whole state of Pennsylvania, that made sure that constituents got what they were supposed to get. That was Sharif Street, right? He did over close to almost 100 and something that went to his Germantown office, and he didn't even know his office was doing it. They were doing that there. They knocked out 100 and something. You had Sidney Bass, who sent people to Street's office, and then you had Jerice Miller. He did almost close to 200 up there in Germantown. So you mean to tell me that they knowing to do it, and then you had Kathy Gilmore Richardson, who sent people to them that, did that. So council knew about it. You had Gordier, who's very good at taking care of her Caucasian constituents very well. And then you had Jim, who just talks to black people like they're, just don't know any better. Like she tell them, I know what's best for you. And then you had Kendricks, who knows nothing. She just there. She just taking up space. She got in there because she was a recipient. But that's what happened. So therefore, if those few people there knew, why didn't the people in Harrisburg know, and why didn't they go ahead and do? All those white state representatives and senators, their people got taken care of with their rent and their mortgages. Even the businesses got taken care of with rent and mortgages. Farmers got taken care of with rent and mortgages, still had all that money left over. So why is it that we have black leadership up there, but they don't do anything for us, just run around and talk about what their title is? Second thing is, Charles, real quick, is that this violence piece, like I tell you, council, you can call them out. They can have all the meetings they want. Don't mean anything. It ain't nothing they can do. All they can do is sit up there and disrespect URD hosts. These council people come on and just totally disrespect the host. When the host gives them a suggestion of what is going on, they just totally, talk over it and say, no, this is this. Council is clueless on the violence. It's good for them because then they have something to talk about when they get ready to run. Oh, we got to get rid of this violence. We got to.
I agree. George, I agree with you. I do believe council, and to a large degree the mayor. Everyone's just clueless. I agree with that statement.
No. They're not clueless. They made a mistake and they can't afford to correct it. When those special Negroes was in that room with McNesby, the mayor, and some others. And those
that falls responsibility, accountability falls on the mayor too. I think it's across the board. Everyone in City Hall. It's just just show a gallon of some leadership here. Just show it. A lot of it just has to deal with the optics.
You what you asked for. You can't blame him.
Yeah, but okay, but I want to move. I want to move past that phase, George. All due respect to you, but I just want to move past that phase of grinding on how, we got what we asked for. Certain interests, people got what we asked for. I just want to solve it. I just want to. We almost at 500 murders by the end of the week.
No, everybody got a point to prove. Okay, and until they all get in the room, it ain't gonna be resolved. They don't care about black people killing black people. So what? It's just numbers. That's the way.
We're gonna have to start kind of changing it. We're gonna have to care about black people killing black people.
They say you asked for a black police commissioner and you wanted a woman. I gave you what you asked for. I asked you what else you want. Those Negroes didn't even have sense enough to say, well, we want this, this, this. They were just overwhelmed that the mayor agreed to give them a black. So you know what he told them after they left out the room? Give them what they asked for. You know what that means? Find me the most unqualified person you can for the job.
I got you. I gotta let you. I'm sorry, George. I have to let you go because I'm almost running up on the break here. But I appreciate that. We're gonna have to. 489 murders. That's the official Philly police count. There will probably be 490, 491, 492 by tomorrow at the current rate. Once we look at the official numbers, we're gonna have to figure. We're gonna have to care about black. We're gonna have to care about black people getting murdered, getting hurt. We're gonna have to care about the current crop. How do we make or force the current crop of leadership to show that they care and actually act like they care? How do we work with what we've got? That's the police commissioner we got right now. We can't engage in a police commissioner search midstream like this, mid-flow. All right, well, how do we make her work? How do we make her work better? I think those are the key questions. I just do, because the more we are immersed in this conversation about what happened, we're not preventing what's going to happen, which is more people getting killed, and more people. I mean, it's insanely ungodly numbers of people getting shot and killed in the city of Philadelphia. It's just it's too much. It's too much, and we haven't yet. We need to have more conversation about. But I appreciate George pointing certain things out. But we do need, I really do, we need to have more conversation about, like, okay, so what are sort of some next steps that we haven't explored? What are the next steps from here? I'm sorry, but yeah, I just don't, but I do agree with George's comment. City Council is clueless, totally clueless with respect to what's happening with this violence thing and what to do with it. And I'm not sure we have to somehow figure that out. Also, don't forget, today is Ujima. Today is Ujima. That's the third principle of Kwanzaa. It focuses on collective responsibility. Collective responsibility, y'all, encourages us to uplift others as a solution to conflicts. Kind of relates to what we were just saying just a moment ago. WURD continues to uplift our communities and provide a voice, ensuring that we are all heard. So right now, you can join the WURD Radio family at a discounted rate of $80 until January 1st, 2021. Become a WURD member today, and that will give you access to special events, exclusive digital content, WURD swag, VIP invitations, discounts, and our printed newsletter, WURD Press. Go to wordradio.com/join now for more details, and we will take care of you from there. All right, let's take a break. When we come back on the other side, we have Dr. Chris Colbert at the University of Chicago Medical Center, ER doctor, going to talk to us more about pandemic, about how we need to navigate, how we need to keep safe. Also talking about his experiences taking the vaccine recently, coronavirus vaccine. So we'll bring him on next here on Reality Check 96.1 FM, 900 AM, wordradio.com, WURD TV, WURD app. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
This message is from the Philadelphia Department of Public Health. COVID-19 is still a threat in our communities, but we can all do something simple to help stop the spread. It's critically important to wear a mask or face covering whenever you're in public or around others. Yes, even while social distancing. Wearing a mask shows you care for yourself and your community and is essential to slowing the spread of COVID-19. So love yourself, love your neighbors, wear a mask.
The WURD Radio newsletter, keeping you informed, engaged, and connected. Sign up by visiting wordradio.com. Scroll to the bottom of the page and type your email address under Connect with Us. You'll receive the latest information on WURD Radio, messages from our president and CEO, Sarah Lomax Reese, exclusive articles and multimedia content, and resources. Stay informed with the WURD Radio newsletter.
I'm Councilmember Jamie Gaudier. As the holidays approach, we've all heard the news. A vaccine for COVID-19 is coming. However, now is not the time to let our guard down. As COVID-19 continues to spread, keep wearing your mask, practice social distancing, and avoid large get-togethers. It will take time before we all get vaccinated. Until then, keep yourself, your family, and your community safe. We will get through this pandemic together. Stay safe. Stop the spread.
WURD family. Join Brother Shamari for a deep dive into the Kwanzaa season, focusing on the Nguzo Saba, the 7 principles of Kwanzaa. Sunday, December 27th from 6 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday and Tuesday from 1 p.m. till 4 p.m. Then on Friday, January 1st from 1 p.m. till 4 p.m. All week, our programs will feature conscientious contemplation, insightful inspiration, and various guests who will provide spoken word, drumming, music, affirmations, meditations, storytelling, testimony, and fellowship. That's Brother Shamari exclusively on WURD Radio, 96.1 FM and 900 AM WURD.
Reality Check with Charles Ellison. Right now on WURD Radio and WURDradio.com.
All right, Dr. Chris Colbert is Assistant Residency Director, Professor of Emergency Medicine at the University of Illinois at Chicago in their Department of Emergency Medicine. He's also the Chair of Continuing Medical Education at the American College of Osteopathic. I'm sorry, I always forget what that the full title of ACOAP. What is that again?
No worries. The American College of Osteopathic Emergency Physicians.
Right.
And yeah.
Excellent. Yeah, it's a mouthful sometimes for those of us who don't know.
I get it.
American College of Osteopathic Emergency Physicians. He's the chair of continuing medical education here, and he joins us regularly. You know, Reality Check has been good to get him on to give us some medical advice, how to navigate this pandemic. Good to see you, Dr. Colbert. Happy holidays, all that good stuff.
Happy holidays to you as well. It's always good to be here. Thank you for the invitation.
Excellent, excellent. What are we seeing as far as people's habits, what people have been doing during this holiday season? We talked about this during Thanksgiving. Anything much change, even as people have been seeing cases spike and deaths go up?
So we have seen some cases spike and deaths go up. However, what we have noticed is a third of the travelers that traveled for Christmas break in 2019, only a third traveled this year in 2020.
Okay.
I think that as time is progressing, the reality of these numbers are really starting to kick in. I honestly believe it's a combination of two things: a indirect change of the political climate and the conversation, the narrative, coupled with people are seeing the numbers post-November. And the narrative of it's not real, these concerns will be behind us after the election did not make that transition.
Yeah.
So there's an audience where it hit home because they continue to come to the hospital.
Okay.
And I think we're seeing a little bit of that.
Okay, got it. And we're still, I mean, how is it right now? I mean, just for you, what you're seeing in the emergency rooms, and you maintain composure pretty well. I would say, you know, I know the stress is high. I know the stress is high in these emergency rooms. You know, as these cases keep flowing in, I mean, it's still a case where it's just everyone's highly strained. Resources are running thinner and thinner each day.
That's an accurate statement. The numbers are still high. We still are working to find rooms. The ICU beds are packed. Specifically in Chicago, they're packed. The numbers are turning around a little bit for Chicago specifically, humbly turning around. Nothing dramatic. We are still all working hard for things to turn that corner. States like California are having it really, really bad. I do believe there's a light at the end of this tunnel with this vaccination, coupled with there's a notable change, and I think the public in some of the behavior, and I think it was pretty evident for specifically this Christmas holiday season.
That's good. Okay, that's promising to see. You know, I want to ask you. You had taken the vaccine recently.
I have.
One of those first responders, yeah. And so, you know, I'm sure people are curious to know how you feel. Well, how you feel. Well, we know how you feel about it, and you know, you're urging people that they're going to need to do this eventually. But how are you feeling? This is the first dose that you took. When did you take it? And I guess you're going to be doing a second dose soon.
It's a quick turnaround. Yes. The biggest challenge I had was the discomfort at the injection site. And my second dose is January the 8th. Okay. Initially, again, had some malaise, a little bit of just generalized weakness and this discomfort, but tons and tons of questions, not only just from patients, but also from family members. It's very humbling when you're in this position, because I literally have family members that say, nah, that's not me. That's not me, Uncle. That's not me, Chris. It's just not going to happen. Good luck for you. Thanks a lot for that. But I just don't feel comfortable. The reality is, I think that having physicians be part of this first group, it promotes confidence. It promotes a little bit more confidence in the vaccine. And my recommendation is always do a little bit more research. And I tell people, to be quite honest with you, getting the vaccine is a whole lot better than getting the virus.
Yeah. Isn't it that some of that discomfort you just described, I mean, is it any different from when you get other vaccines? Like when you get or is it somewhat somewhat different, a little bit more intense. Talk about that discomfort, because there is a lot of conversation around that.
And I'm so glad you made that point. I received the flu vaccine once a year. It's part of the requirement to work in the emergency room, part of the major recommendations. I received discomfort at the injection site as well. There's a lot of similarities in the acute effects that you are noted from this vaccine. And it's not unique, in fact, to COVID-19 vaccine. And so I hope that's a part of a reassuring fact to encourage other people to look into the vaccine.
Yeah, I know we'll be keeping it close. I'm sure you'll be keeping us up. So when we have you back on the next couple of weeks, how's he doing? You know, like,
pretty much.
I mean, which is good. You know, just to see, you know, so people can see that on WURD TV. So, Dr. Colbert, he looks fine. And at some point, talk as far as like that vaccine, there has been some conversation. I was reading an op-ed, I think it was a Washington Post over the weekend, about how, you know, there are some people who feel a way about medical professionals getting the vaccine first over the, and some of those conversations that were taking place within the CDC advisory boards about, you know, kind of putting the needs of younger and quite, you know, able-bodied medical professionals over older high-risk groups. What is that conversation like kind of internally? That is a tough decision to make. Like, okay,
so here's the thing.
On one hand, you want the medical responders to get it first because they're the ones that are carrying and you're under strain. But on the other hand, you do wonder about, okay, well, how soon can we get this vaccine to the high-risk groups?
And that's fair. So there's a lot of ways to answer this question. There's a lot of ways to answer this question. And this is not a unique statement that's made as well. That I've had that conversation as well. So a couple things. In reference to the numbers of physicians available, and not just physicians, just medical staff for a hospital, providing a service to such a larger number of the community. Please keep in mind, I have medical residents, medical students, other colleagues that are out for 2 weeks because they get COVID. So that's one less person who can assist in the process of providing a service to the community. We're not just seeing COVID, it's just a really great topic, but we're also seeing appendicitis, we're also seeing children with fevers, we're also seeing chest pains. So it's still a process of treating all those individuals who come with certain concerns. So that being said, you want to ensure that that population, that small population that provides a service, is available and healthy based on what the needs are. That's number one. And number two, they're also tracking our information. So this is a population that at this point are more likely to provide insight if they have adverse reactions. The more challenging a population is in reference to accessing information. How are you doing? Can you provide information? Do you have an email address? Can we have a cell phone, information contact, so we can come in contact with you if in fact something happens, or if someone that received the vaccine before you had an allergic reaction, please let us know. We're still collecting data. The data is being collected by the CDC, and this population can provide that information and have access to provide information at a time in which you need the data.
Yeah.
And I think there's again different ways to answer that question, but that's just two of the different answers that can also apply as well.
Got it. The vaccine. So we have we got now both Moderna and Pfizer. We'll start with Pfizer and Moderna also approved. They're being distributed. What are the difference? You know, people are asking about the differences between those two vaccines and how they're being administered, how they're being distributed. Also, differences in terms of how they feel. So you took the Moderna vaccine.
I took the Pfizer.
You took the Pfizer vaccine. Got it. So, but are there any different? What are the differences that we need to know about between these two?
So in reference to efficacy, it's very, very slim line. With Pfizer, the efficacy of decreasing the symptoms, in fact, are 95%. That with Moderna is 94.1 or 94.3. So the efficacy of decreasing the symptoms secondary to COVID-19 are pretty much equal. The difference between in reference to storage was huge. In order to have the vaccine at your facility that's Pfizer, you have to have a a means of storing the vaccine in a really, really cold temperature, as opposed to the Moderna, which can be kept in, humbly speaking, less colder temperatures, which means the resource for you to hold is considerably better. Receiving the second dose is 21 days with Pfizer, 28 days with Moderna.
Okay.
And what's important to communicate as well to the public is that these vaccines are used to decrease the symptoms. There's very little data at this point that there's evidence that they will decrease transmission. So you can receive the vaccine and still, in theory, transmit this virus. It's just the symptoms for that individual will be significantly mitigated based on the vaccine.
Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah, a lot of people not realizing this is more of a discussion we have to have about that. What about the AstraZeneca? That's the third one that's also kind of flowing into the mix. That has less efficacy as the Moderna and Pfizer. And so what sort of conversation are you privy to as far as that, where, people being worried about like receiving a less effective or less efficacious vaccine versus the Moderna and Pfizer? I know I've talked with some medical folks about that, and that creating trust issues.
And here's the thing, just you and I talking here, that's a really poor marketing technique.
Right.
For something that's early in conversation, and
we tend to underestimate that.
Yeah, exactly. So wait a minute, you want to give me something that will possibly work but is less efficacious than other two vaccines?
Right.
Let me stand in line for the other two. And here's the thing, it decreases the symptomology of COVID-19. And yes, in fact, the efficacy is less.
Yeah.
That's all I got. With the data that we receive right now.
It's just as effective as the other two, but I know that there's that growing conversation about. And then what happens when there's like a limited supply of Moderna, Pfizer, or certain type? And I've been having this conversation of people saying, oh, well then certain like low-income populations, black, brown populations, they'll get the less efficacious one that doesn't require as much refrigeration because there's more of it and it's easier to make. And so that's that conversation is there.
That conversation is there. Again, you are a great platform for allowing the public to have some insight on. These are very common questions. The statements you're asking, my patients ask, and it's just a very good resource what you're providing right now for the public to gain some insight on these topics.
Let me ask you too, Doctor, while I got you for a couple more minutes, like long-term effects, because I think here's some of the distortion in the national discourse about coronavirus and about the vaccine and everything else. One, you do have certain interests of saying, oh, well, there's like, it's only like a 1% fatality rate, but that's like 1% out of 330 million. That's a lot of people, So, and there are other estimates, other studies showing that the fatality rate could be higher. So that's high. Like you want 0% on this. So that's one. But two, how are we assessing the long-term effects? Because after you get this thing, people who've had it months ago are saying they're still complaining of ailments. And over the long term, this potentially is a chronic disease for a lot of people over the long term, right?
At this stage, we're looking at, in fact, research is done specifically at my shop in reference to some of the long-term effects of the pulmonary effects, the effects of the lung. There was just an article by Sanjay Gupta in AARP, in fact. It's very well written in reference to the concept of the data is collected on long-term neurologic related concerns with COVID-19. COVID-19 is a serious virus that has some long-term effects that we're just collecting the data on right now. And again, any means in which we can mitigate the negative effects of this, it's worth the effort. I'm seeing way too many patients that are admitted. I'm seeing way too many families that come to the hospital that have the conversation of, I've got to admit your mother, your father, your uncle. I'm sorry, unfortunately, we can't have you visit your family members, and we're going to do the best we can at this point, and there's some really great advances, but right now we're in the early stages of this health for your family members. It's humbling for everyone. And when people make the statement, it's only a few numbers, and the assumption that we can play the numbers out is poor math.
Yeah.
Very poor math.
It is very poor math, and people have to understand this is going to be a long haul battle, long haul war as far as coronavirus is concerned. We've been talking with Dr. Chris Colbert. He's the chair of continuing medical education at the American College of Osteopathic Emergency Physicians, also assistant residency director and professor of emergency medicine at the University of Illinois at Chicago in their emergency medicine department. He joins us here regularly on Reality Check, just sharing some medical advice. And thanks for sharing your vaccine experience with us, too. Continue to keep us updated on that. Thanks so much. Happy holidays to you and yours. We'll see you on the other side.
Happy holidays to you, and everyone stay safe. Happy New Year as well.
All right. Excellent. Happy New Year back at you. Thanks again, Doctor. Take care. Be safe.
I appreciate the invitation. Have a good day.
All right. You too. All right, let's take a break and then come back on the other side. Phone lines are open at 215-634-8065, 866-361-0900 as we close out this Monday edition of Reality Check. We'll be right back.
This WURD Kwanzaa vignette is brought to you by the Curtis Institute of Music. Habari Gani from WURD Radio. The 7 days of Kwanzaa are dedicated to the Nguzo Saba, or the 7 principles of Kwanzaa. Today is the 3rd day of Kwanzaa, Ujima, or collective work and responsibility. Let's use today to build community with our neighbors, extended families, and co-workers. If you possess a certain skill set, consider sharing your skills with others. Passing knowledge on gives additional value to your community and strengthens your confidence in the subject. Encourage leadership among young people and lend an attentive, invested ear when they present ideas. For more information about Kwanzaa, visit wordradio.com. This WURD Kwanzaa vignette was brought to you by the Curtis Institute of Music. The Curtis Institute of Music educates and trains exceptional young musicians. And to ensure that admissions are based solely on artistic promise, Curtis makes an investment in each admitted student so that no tuition is charged for their studies. Meet Curtis today at curtis.edu. This WURD Kwanzaa vignette is brought to you by Pico, Keystone Plus, and JD's Auto Body and Painting. Habari Gani from WURD Radio. The 7 days of Kwanzaa are dedicated to the Nguzo Saba, or the 7 principles of Kwanzaa. Today is the 3rd day of Kwanzaa, Ujima, or collective work and responsibility. Let's use today to build community with our neighbors, extended families, and co-workers. If you possess a certain skill set, consider sharing your skills with others. Passing knowledge on gives additional value to your community and strengthens your confidence in the subject. Encourage leadership among young people and lend an attentive, invested ear when they present ideas. For more information about Kwanzaa, visit wordradio.com. This WURD Kwanzaa vignette was brought to you by Pico, powering communities, Keystone Plus, and JD's Auto Body and Painting for all your auto body and detailing needs during this holiday season.
Always Best Care is a great place to work.
Flexibility, leadership, purpose,
great benefits.
There's never a dull moment.
Diversity, inclusion, compasión.
We love our jobs. If you're looking for a great place to work, you can join our compassionate Team Green. You can apply online at teamgreenabc.com or call 267-909-9248.
Teamwork makes the dream work.
Reality Check with Charles Ellison right now on WURD Radio and wordradio.com.
All right, welcome back to Reality Check. Phone lines are open at 215-634-8065, toll free 866-361-0900. Don't forget about the Buy Black WURD virtual holiday marketplace. Go to wordradio.com/marketplace, wordworks.com/marketplace too. And you can buy black during this holiday, during this Kwanzaa season, this Kwanzaa 2020. Remember, the word of the day is Ujima, collective responsibility, Ujima. And yesterday was Kujichagulia with self-determination. 215-634-8065, toll free. It is 866-361-0900 here on Reality Check. 215-634-8065, toll free, 866-361-0900. Derek out of North Philly calling in for a Reality Check. Derek?
Love, peace, blessings, and prosperity, and Ujima, Charles.
All right. Peace. Ujima, back at you. Thank you.
Right on, my man. You know, I think that's the attitude that we need to have, Ujima, going into the new year as we end out this. I just want to speak on your last caller, George. George, to bring out some facts that are undisputable, and that's, you know, the truth. But what I like about you, Charles, is how that you deal with certain callers when they come with facts, but a slice of pessimism. And I like just how you try to keep things optimistic, as to say, okay, because we still have to press forward in the sense that, Charles, you know, there was in the gospel, in the Bible, if people are familiar with it, where it says that in certain times that father against son and mother against daughter, brother against sister. And people look at these times and say, well, the Bible did say that. It's true. But it was served as a warning or as a sign that when we see these things, to counteract it, to offset it. Don't let it happen to you or your family. So I like to say that if we're fed up with city council and the president of city council and the mayor, as I am, and then, Charles, we hear that it was a low turnout and things like that. Okay, Ujima, let's take responsibility for ourselves. As the state, it's our own fault. We have teachers. You know, maybe we need to be better teachers. Or maybe we're tired of teaching and we need to do something else, because certainly a teacher that takes their work serious, if they feel that a student is failing, they take responsibility for that. And I think if it's low turnouts and things like Charles, we have to take responsibility as leaders, as teachers, to see that the people understand, because there are people who are young and who have become elders, and they still don't understand the local politics, the importance of it. Is it their fault? Maybe some, but I think that taking responsibility, we have to look in our community as those who are leaders and say, well, I need to do better. I need to do more. Yes, take the responsibility as the leader.
I agree with you on that, Derek. We have to view our community as an asset and not as an afterthought. And too often we do that. We are our own. We are our greatest asset. And so, you know, the more we start thinking like that, and so that's going to provide the kinds of opportunities that we seek, and that's also going to provide the solution to a lot of these problems that we talk about, whether it's homicides or the high poverty or permanent unemployment, rising food insecurity, the illiteracy issue. We're the answer to our problem.
Yes.
And that's what I'm trying to get people to get towards. Like, I don't want to dwell too much. You know, like, I appreciate people mentioning the issues and the challenges and the problems we face. And I do appreciate, you know, every once in a while, and people need to do that, you know, need to vent and identify what the problem is. But, like, ongoing, constant problem identification without steering the conversation towards problem resolution, that's destructive in and of itself. That's not going to get us anywhere. So we're going to have to figure out now, okay, well, how do we best work with what we've got? Like, these are the cards we've been dealt. And so, okay, well, how do we best play those cards? Because I don't want to head into 2021. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot to gripe about as far as City Hall, as far as the current police commissioner, as far as this and that. Okay, so how do we make them work better until we get to the next election, of course? Because all this griping, you know, I hear a lot of this griping, but I don't hear people getting mobilized and getting mobilized to the point where, you know, there's like, I want to see 70, 80%. I mean, the way people gripe when they call in to a show like Reality Check, you would think there would be like 70, 80% turnout to like totally cleanse it. Get right. I mean, the level of just pure, you know what I mean? Like pure hate. I mean, the people and shade that is thrown at Philadelphia City Hall. You would think like, okay, wow, man, they about to turn out and this, that. And then we get like 28% turnout. I'm like, what? It just falls totally flat. I don't get that. But I agree with you, Derek. Hey, Derek, I got to let you go. Let me go to the next one. Thanks for calling. Thanks for sharing that. I got to go to Glenn out of South Philly calling in for a reality check. Glenn?
How you doing, brother?
How you doing, brother?
Good afternoon. How you doing?
Please. All right.
I want to just make a few statements. And that is that if they poison our water, our air, our food,
yeah,
why should black people trust them with a vaccine? Why should we trust them with a vaccine, given their history?
So what do you? Well, let me ask this. But Glenn, let me ask this. So what's your plan, or what specifically have you found out about that will get us through coronavirus, get us through the pandemic? What are you going to do in lieu of the vaccine?
One thing for sure is that we've been hoodwinked to believing that.
I know all about it. I know all about that. But once again, how do we get? But you got. But wait a second. I'll let you finish. I'll let you finish. But you're going to have to answer that question, Glenn, because that's an important question. Because a lot of people are hurt, sick. People are going to have long-term chronic diseases. We already had 350,000 people die. We will have 500,000 within the next several months. How do we resolve that? How do we end that? How do we end that? Because we're going to have to do something. And right now, at this point, the medical science, based on what we have and the types of resources we have at our disposal, has given us this vaccine, as we have vaccines for a number of other things. I can't put my kids in school unless they get vaccinated. Full stop. So it's going to be the same thing with coronavirus. So what else do you have in mind? Go ahead.
Well, first of all, nobody is doing a study, again, independently as us. Nobody's doing a study on the hydrochloroquine. Okay, that's not an injection. Right? Now, we can't sue the pharmaceutical company for vaccination, but we can sue for meds, prescription meds. That's number one. Number two is Pfizer has had a big lawsuit in the billions of dollars against them from killing black children in Nigeria. Bayer has had a big, major lawsuit against them for HIV, right? And Johnson & Johnson has is having a major lawsuit right now, which they're still paying off. So
they're still paying off for talcum powder. I hear you. I know.
Yeah, so we're talking about billions and billions of dollars, and these people are the ones that are saying, okay, we got something for you, black folks. You take it first.
It's not just, and I'll say this, though. I'll say this, Glenn. I hear you, and that's something we constantly unpack. We've been unpacking that, but we also, at the end of the day, this is like, in terms of getting through this pandemic and eliminating or mitigating the impact of coronavirus, this is what we have. This is the vaccine. You're going to have issues. There's always issues or challenges. The science is never completely 100% perfect. You're going to have issues and challenges with any disease that requires a vaccine. And yes, and these companies do have, these corporations, there's a lot of answers that need to, or a lot of questions that need to be answered with respect to how they've operated and how they've made their money in the past. But I mean, it keeps begging the question, okay, because that's the question we got to start getting at. Like, well, what do we do? Like, well, what else is there? Glenn, I'm sorry, I got to let you go because I'm running up on time. No, I think you're raising good questions, but let's start thinking about that. We have to wrap. I'm sorry, Prince, I'll get to you tomorrow. I appreciate you too, Glenn, calling in, and Derek out in North, and everyone else. All right, and that's something we will address that. But keep thinking of that question, which we do have to raise. Okay, well then, what's out there? What else is out there that can help heal us, like medically? That's like medically and scientifically, clinically sound. That's going to heal us and help us get to the other side of this. Right now, at this point, and it is going to get to the point where it is going to be mandated in various sectors of society where we're going to have to take it. Just like our children have to take vaccine before they go to school, before they can step inside of a school building. It's getting to that point. And we're not going to reach that kind of level of herd immunity we need to get past this unless there's some level of vaccination that's taking place. But we'll talk more about it. That wraps this Monday edition of Reality Check. I want to thank Troy Wilmore, too, at the board of still. We got the special Kwanzaa show with Shamari, with Brother Shamari. That's coming up next, so keep your WURD radio dial locked in. Philly and everyone else beyond wants you to stay smart, stay sharp, and more importantly, stay safe out there. We will talk to you Tuesday, tomorrow, God willing, and continue happy holidays, happy Kwanzaa to you. All right, let's go to Brother Shamari for our special Kwanzaa.